My wife cheated on me with our horrible neighbor while I was paralyzed, but a life-changing surgery gave me a second chance to rebuild my life. My name is Ethan John. In the last year or two, my life has been a roller coaster of unbelievable lows and surprising highs. It all began with a terrible accident that left me paralyzed and unable to move or talk. But this was only the beginning of my horror. What followed was a string of betrayals, abuse, and misery that nearly destroyed me. Despite everything, I managed to survive and even thrive. Here's my tale. I was involved in an accident. I was riding my motorcycle on a lovely afternoon when a truck driver, apparently unaware of me, pulled out onto the highway. The collision was terrible. I don't remember much of the impact, just a flash of metal and then darkness. When I awoke in the hospital, I was unable to move. I could not talk. I could scarcely blink. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky? That word struck me as a cruel joke at the moment. I was immobilized from the neck down, unable to do more than breathe and blink. I couldn't swallow without trouble. Going to the bathroom? Don't get me started on the humiliation. The only silver lining, if you can call it that, was the multi-million-dollar payout I received from the transportation firm. All of my medical expenditures were paid, and I would receive a monthly stipend to sustain my wife, Laura, and me for the rest of our lives. We were financially secure, thanks to my disability payments and Laura's job as a paralegal. But money could not repair what was broken within me. After 6 months in the hospital, I was finally allowed to return home. I believed things would improve once I was in familiar surroundings, but I was mistaken. That's when my life took a darker turn. How's that? The counselor inquired, staring at me. I'm quite ashamed. I don't think I can even remember what happened in those 6 months, I remarked, a tear running down my cheek. That's okay, she responded in response. Everything you say here will remain confidential. Remember that I'm here to help you heal. I nodded and took a glass of water before proceeding. Let us start with your marriage. Tell me a little about that. I told her about my marriage to Laura, how we met in college and got married after we graduated. I was only 25 years old when my injury occurred, and we had been married for 3 years. I worked as a mechanical engineer, and she was a paralegal at a large law company downtown. We were able to afford a spacious 3-bedroom apartment. Originally, we intended to convert one bedroom into a nursery. We both used the second bedroom as an office, but after my accident, the nursery became my room because it was spacious enough to house all of my medical equipment. Laura did her best to care for me for the first month or two, but it was evident that she wasn't up to the task, particularly with the bathroom. So she sought assistance. Greg and Callie Wallace, our neighbors, offered to help in any way they could. At the time, I considered them pals. Greg, an attorney at Laura's business, frequently drove her to work. Callie was a nurse at a nearby hospital, so she would check in on me from time to time to ensure I was okay. She even helped us get a home health nurse to check on me during the day. Laura was clearly not up to the task after a month, even with all of the assistance. That's when Greg stepped in. The counselor asked, yes. It began innocently enough, but I could see he had feelings for my wife. She frequently broke down crying, and he was always there to soothe her. I could hear them in the front room, making out on our couch. Then he would take her into our former master bedroom and have sex with her. But it didn't end there, did it? The counselor inquired. I shake my head. No, I replied. Afterward, he would come into my room to taunt me, telling me how he felt after screwing my wife. I saw the counselor's expression. Sorry, I apologized. Where was his wife during all of this? The counselor inquired. Was she working? Yes, she often worked strange shifts, and it wasn't unusual for her to be gone all night, working the graveyard shift. I see, the counselor replied. Go on. I took a big breath before proceeding. After about a month, he entered my room as Laura was taking a shower. I was so ashamed that I couldn't finish my statement. Did he abuse you? The counselor inquired. I nodded as I wiped the tears from my face. Yes, I said gently. How often did this happen? The counselor inquired. I'm not sure, maybe a couple of times every week for about 4 months. He even said he was going to invite some of his friends over to have fun with me. Did your wife know this was going on? The counselor inquired. I shrugged my shoulders. I do not know. She was never present when it happened. She'd always come by later and say how great it was to have people like Greg to look after me. I'll never forget the day he hauled in that blasted monitor and installed it on my dresser. He linked it up to a camera and made me watch while he screwed my wife. Laura thought it was great that he brought it in. When did the abuse stop? The counselor inquired. The day Dr. Victor stopped over to see me. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Laura invited Dr. Victor and my attorney into my room, just a few hours after Greg had abused me. Dr. Victor was an older, slightly shorter, balding man with a German accent. I reflected on the visit. "Ethan, there's a Dr. Victor here to see you," Laura remarked as she led him into my room. Dr. Victor approached and introduced himself to me. He also introduced an assistant with a tablet. My lawyer, Jacob Harrison, was also present. "Ethan, I'm Dr. Franklin Victor, and I'm here to discuss a possible treatment for your condition." He looked at Laura before proceeding. "I'll take care of it from here, Missy," he explained. "Please wait in the other room." She exited the room, but I noticed a concerned expression on her face. He returned my gaze, pulled up a chair and sat down, looked me in the eyes before responding. "Now, Ethan, allow me to explain. I manage a high-end research facility on Lake Arrowhead. We've been conducting revolutionary research on 3D bone restoration and nerve healing implants. I believe your situation is tailor-made for us. I glanced at your record, and I know how much damage you've sustained," he said. "I believe we can help you regain the most, if not all, of your physical ability. Is this something you might be interested in? Please blink once to confirm and twice to deny." What else could I say about something like this? Of course, I did blink once. "Good," he replied with a smile. "Now, you must understand that this is all experimental, but we have received approval for human testing. Thanks to external grants, it will cost you nothing." That was fantastic news, but I was apprehensive about the experimentation. "I know you're probably concerned about this being experimental," he continued as if he could read my mind. "Don't be concerned about that. Even if the operation fails, you will not be any worse off than you are today. But I feel you are a good candidate, and I'm confident that everything will be all right. In fact, if we're as successful as I expect, you'll be stronger than you were before the accident." That gave me hope, so I listened as he described the operation. Essentially, he said that all of the damaged vertebrae would be replaced with vertebrae composed of a composite material that was stronger than the originals. In addition, the new vertebrae would be created using a 3D printer and data from my own body. In principle, the new bones would be perfect replicas of the old ones, albeit stronger. In addition, he would put tiny electrical implants to assist mend the injured nerves. The operation would take 3 to 4 hours, and the recuperation period could be several days, depending on how quickly I healed. Dr. Victor also stated that he had already evaluated the data from my stay and began the process of manufacturing the new bones. "I hope you don't mind," he remarked. "Initially, we wanted to explore if we could recreate the injured bone using data from your records. We chose to proceed with the surgery after determining that we could. When I was strong enough, he indicated I could start physical therapy, which may last a few weeks." "So is this something you would like to try?" the man inquired. "Blink once for yes or twice for no." Of course, I did blink once. He smiled as he rubbed his hands together. "Very good," he declared. He motioned his helper to join us. "Please let Mr. John read the agreement." The assistant came over and held the tablet as I read the agreement. When I was finished, Dr. Victor asked whether I agreed again, ordering me to blink once to indicate yes. I blinked once. "Very well," he remarked, asking his aide to have me electronically sign using my thumbprint. Once that was completed, Jacob countersigned to confirm that he had witnessed my approval to the operation. "Are you ready to get started?" he inquired. Of course, I did blink once. He smiled. "Let's get going. Greg, we have everything you'll need at our facilities." He directed to his aide to take me out of the apartment and into a huge van waiting in the parking area. Laura stopped us on our way out. "Where are you going?" she inquired. Dr. Victor stared at her before responding, "Your husband has agreed to a procedure that could help him get back on his feet." "Where are you taking him?" she inquired. "How long will he be gone? How much will this cost?" "We are transporting him to my facility on Lake Arrowhead," the doctor stated. "He may be gone for several weeks, depending on how well he responds to the treatment and rehabilitation. His doctor and lawyer are well aware of what is going on and they have given their approval, as has your spouse. Cost is not a concern. Now if you don't mind, let's get started." "Wait, I haven't seen any agreement and I don't even know what's going to happen." "He doesn't need your approval, Mrs. John," Jacob said. "He is crippled, not incompetent. Everything was explained to him, and he gave his permission. You want your husband to get healthy, right?" "Yes, of course I do," she replied. I could sense a hint of shame in her voice. "Can I at least come see him? Perhaps after the procedure, when he's up to having visitors, you can come," the doctor suggested. Otherwise, you should probably stay right here for now. We will be in touch. Perhaps now is a good moment to say farewell and wish your husband well. Laura moved in front of me and kissed me on the lips. Get well, honey. Let me know when I can come to see you, okay? Of course, I couldn't say anything, but I felt hot inside. Dr. Victor and his aide rolled me out to the van. Once I was inside, the helper took the wheel and we were on our way. I could see Laura standing in the parking lot, watching us depart. I had no idea what she was thinking, but I felt like I'd just been freed from a hostage situation. A few hours later, we arrived at the facility and I was led into a very lovely room where many nurses began prepping me for the treatment. I hope you don't mind, Ethan, but I thought it best to get started right away. Victor, your doctor remarked. He turned to face the nurses. Once you have him prepared, please bring him to the operating room. Yes, Dr. Victor, one of the nurses replied. Okay, Ethan, I will leave you in the capable hands of your nurses, and I'll see you in the OR, he said before leaving. Soon, they had me undressed, bathed and dressed in a robe that revealed my back. They put me on a stretcher and transported me to the operating room, where 3 extremely large orderlies carefully scooped me up and laid me face down on the table. The anesthesiologist performed his duties and the last thing I heard before leaving was Dr. Victor saying, "Oh my." I had no idea what he was referring to. I awoke still face down, but this time I was in some sort of device that kept me immobilized. I had a tube down my mouth and an IV implanted into my arm. My right arm was fitted with a blood pressure bracelet. Suddenly, the device rotated and I found myself looking up at Dr. Victor. You're awake, he stated. Good. You'll be pleased to hear that the operation went smoothly. We'll have to keep you motionless for a few days to ensure proper healing. After all, we had to do a lot of replacing. You may have tingling or itching in your back. This is normal. That means the implants are performing their function. Both the nurses and I will keep a careful eye on you. Don't be scared. The apparatus you're in will rotate your body periodically. Just try to relax for now, okay? We'll talk in a few days. After that, he checked my vital signs, gave the nurses some instructions and left. Relax, what else was I going to do? He was correct about one thing. I did feel a tingling feeling in the middle of my back, which irritated me to no end. I also felt itchy and wanted to scratch, but I couldn't. As unpleasant as it was refreshing to feel something for the first time in almost a year. That night, 2 nurses came in to wash me down. I could feel them washing my legs, buttocks, and back. I was more than startled, I was shocked. I could really feel what they were doing. They rolled over the bed and started washing me from the front. That's when I caught a good look at them. They were both very young and gorgeous. One had shoulder-length blonde hair, while the other was brunette. As they bathed me, I felt something different. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't move my head, but I noticed a smile on their faces as they observed me. The blonde gazed at me. Well, I'm no doctor, but it looks like something is working down here, she added with a smile. They giggled slightly but continued to do their work. They finished what they were doing and departed the room, but not before offering me some encouragement. I ended up being in the device for 4 days. The days were pretty much the same. Every morning, I had x-rays done, and nurses would massage my arms and legs. Later in the day, I received a thorough sponge bath. As the days passed, I became more aware of what was happening to me. On the 4th day, Dr. Victor came into my room and examined me attentively. He sat down next to me, pulled out a pin, and immediately inserted it in my calf. I felt something and made a noise. I couldn't say anything because I still had a tube in my throat. He stared at me. Did you feel that? He inquired. I blinked once and attempted to nod my head, but I couldn't because it was still strapped down. He smiled. Very good. He asked me to try moving my toes. I was surprised to learn that I could. Then he instructed me to move my fingers, and I did. Outstanding, he said. He checked my x-rays thoroughly and summoned some nurses. I think it's time we got Mr. John out of this contraption. They took the tube out of my throat, removed my catheter, reconnected all of the tubes, and released me from the device. Then they carried me to a gurney and took me to my room, where they put me in a bed. Dr. Victor spoke with the nurses before sitting down next to me. I can't tell you how pleased I am with your results, he told me. We will need to start your physical therapy right away, and we will begin with some exercises you may do in your bed. I don't want to put too much pressure on your back right now. He inserted a cup with a straw into my mouth. Take a drink. I did, and it felt great going down my throat. Try to say something, he advised when I finished swallowing. Wow, I muttered. He laughed and nodded his head. That will do, he he said. How do you feel? Like a new man, I replied, my voice still feeble. I could feel my eyes beginning to water. This was the first time I'd been able to do or say anything since my accident. He grabbed a tissue and wiped my eyes. I understand this is an extremely emotional moment for you, Ethan. For now, I want you to relax. Don't overdo it. Your back still has to heal, but the implants appear to be operating properly. I'm concerned that you've lost some muscle mass since the accident, so we'll set you up with a diet and exercise plan to assist you regain muscle function. Now I'd like to present you to the staff members who will be looking after you. He waved his hand and several young women entered the room. I'm Emily, your nutritionist. Now will be your physical therapist, he explained, indicating to a short-haired muscular blonde who nodded once. Rachel will be your day nurse, he announced, pointing to a tiny woman with short brown hair. And this is Megan, your night nurse, he explained, gesturing to a taller, red-haired woman. Her eyes twinkled as she smiled at me. Nice to meet you, I said. Now, if there is anything you need, please feel free to let us know, the doctor remarked. We all live here at the facility, so we're available 24 hours a day. He motioned for the women to leave the room briefly before returning to me. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something. This is a difficult subject, so please let me know if you feel uncomfortable. I'm curious, I stated. I detected a good degree of rectal damage when we began the surgery on you. I also collected samples of what I found in that region. I'm not here to condemn, but I was wondering. No, I murmured, feeling ashamed. I see, he replied. So you were abused? Tears started to pour down my cheeks. Yes, I was able to get out. He cleaned my face before speaking. You are aware that I have an obligation to disclose this to the authorities. In this state, abusing a disabled person is a felony, as well as a hate crime. I collected samples of what I discovered, and the lab is conducting an analysis that includes DNA. Do you know who did this to you? Yes, I said gently. Was your wife involved? He inquired. I do not know. She was never present when he did it. I see, he replied. Are you willing to name the person who did this to you? I nodded my head. Yes, I informed him. Good, I will call the authorities once we have completed the analysis. In the interim, I'll connect you with a counselor. Thanks. You are welcome. Now, shall we focus on getting you back on your feet? They fitted a contraption to the head of my enormous bed that allowed me to lift weights while lying down, but Dr. Victor didn't want me to use it right away. For the first week, they simply had me do hand exercises and brought in a machine to perform leg workouts. Na proved to be quite the therapist. As she yelled for cadence, I pushed with one foot and then the other. I spy drivey, she retorted in German, and I strained to keep up. I couldn't help but notice her accent was much stronger than Dr. Victor's. She would have made an excellent drill coach, I thought, as she urged me to move faster. Gut, she exclaimed. We'll feed you some protein to get your muscles back in condition. Every Fräulein in town will be after you, and probably a frustrated Hausfrau or two, she said with a wicked giggle. This gets us to the present. She set down her pen and looked at the counselor, who had carefully listened to my narrative. Ethan, the next few weeks will be very challenging for you. Frankly, I'm not sure which will be more difficult, the physical or mental recuperation. I'm delighted you feel comfortable talking to me about this, and I hope you take action against the people who harmed you. They breached the law and must be dealt with. I want you to know that I'm here for you, and you may contact me at any time. Okay? Okay, thanks. With that, the session was over, and I was taken back to my room. A few of the days later, Dr. Victor entered my room, leading a couple of men in dark suits. I realized Jacob was with them. After chasing the nurses out of my room, the doctor sat down beside me. Ethan, these men are here to talk about your circumstances at home. I also called your lawyer. I hope you do not mind. Not at all, I replied. Jacob appeared stunned when he heard me say, You're looking much better, Ethan, he murmured, standing over me. I grinned as I reached out to shake his hand. Surprised, he agreed and shook my hand. Thank you, I am feeling a lot better. I can now eat on my own. He is doing quite well, Dr. Victor added. If all goes well, he'll be even stronger than he was before the accident. That's good to hear, Jacob responded. Ethan, this is Agent Cole and Agent Davis from the State Police. They're come to take your statement. Are you ready to speak with them? Absolutely. The three guys took up chairs, and Agent Cole produced a recorder. Mr. John, I hope you don't mind if we record this interview, he said. Not at all, I replied. They spent the next hour taking notes and asking questions as I described the past 4 months of abuse at the hands of someone I believed was a friend. This was the third time I had to admit what had happened to me, and it was equally humiliating and agonizing. "And you say this Mr. Wallace is the man who assaulted you repeatedly?" Agent Cole inquired. "Yes," I answered. "I have the sample I took from Mr. John, along with the analysis," Dr. Victor stated. "There was considerable rectal injury that needed to be addressed. That's all in my report." Agent Cole stated, "We'll need to take that into evidence." Dr. Victor nodded his head. "Tell me, Mr. John," Agent Cole asked, glancing back at me, "is this the same Greg Wallace who works at McMaster and Williams law firm?" "Yes, it is," I answered. "And your wife works at this firm as well?" "Yes, she does," I informed him. "And you allege that the two of them have been engaged in an affair during this time?" he inquired. "That's correct," I replied. "Was she ever present when the assaults took place?" Agent Cole inquired. I shake my head. "She was at the apartment, but we never shared a room, as far as I recall. Indeed, she appeared to believe that he was assisting me in some way." "I see," the agent replied. "Nevertheless, we'll have to bring her in as an accessory. Even if she wasn't physically in the same room, it's hard to believe she didn't notice anything was wrong." "Ethan, are you certain about all of this?" Jacob inquired, surprised. "I know Greg personally, and I find it hard to believe he would do something like this." "Maybe you don't know him as well as you think," I remarked rhetorically. "You have Dr. Victor's report, and you have the sample." "I can't explain it," Jacob replied. "I take it you're going to want a divorce from your wife." "Absolutely," I said, nodding. "Okay, I'll start the paperwork. I'll contact you before we file. I also want a restraining order," I informed him. "I don't want either of them anywhere near me, and I sure as heck don't want them in my apartment." "As of right now, we'll be treating your apartment as a potential crime scene," Agent Cole informed us. "How much longer is Mr. John going to be here?" he inquired. "Hard to say," the doctor replied. "At least 5 more weeks, possibly longer. It depends on how well he reacts to the treatment and therapy." "Very well," Cole replied. "At least he'll be safe for a while longer." He turned to face his buddy. "Get a search warrant for the John apartment and arrest warrants for Mrs. John and Mr. Wallace." The other agent nodded and left the room. Cole turned around to face me. "Just so you know, Mr. John," Cole explained, "we're going to charge your wife as an accessory. If it comes down to it, are you willing to testify against her in court?" "Yes," I said. "Okay," he replied quietly. Davis had returned and gave a thumbs up. "The warrant will be ready when we get back to the office." Cole nodded and packed his gear, including the sample he received from Dr. Victor. "We'll be in touch, Mr. John," he added. "I hope everything works out for you." "Thank you," I replied. After they went, Jacob approached me. "Ethan, you are making serious charges. Greg might lose everything: his job, his license, and possibly even his wife. Are you very convinced about this?" "I'm 100% confident, Jacob. I honestly do not care if he loses everything. In fact, given what he has done, he deserves to lose everything. I hope you are on my side in this." "Tell me right now if you aren't, and I'll get another lawyer." "I am on your side, Ethan. It's only, I don't know. It's difficult for me to believe. I met his wife and ate in their home. I've never seen anything to indicate he'd do something so dumb." "Well, he did," I explained. "Can I sue him as well?" "I don't see any reason why not," Jacob responded. "We reside in one of the few states where alienation of affection cases are permitted, so I will investigate that as well. However, you should be aware that they rarely travel far. I genuinely apologize for this, Ethan. I had no idea. It is not your fault. I had no means to let anyone know." We exchanged goodbyes, and he went. I felt slightly better knowing that something was going to be done. The next few weeks passed fast. Na had me standing up in no time. At first, she made me walk on a treadmill. Then she made me work with weights. Emily put me on a high protein and fiber diet, and I started to observe my muscle mass returning to normal. Meanwhile, the authorities were preparing a case against Greg and Laura. Jacob believed it was prudent to keep the divorce papers until she was arrested. Agent Cole and Davis returned several times with state prosecutors, seeking more comprehensive information from me about the assaults. They informed me that the analysis confirmed that Dr. Victor had retrieved Greg's DNA from me. Jacob also hired a private investigator to acquire evidence of their adultery. It wasn't tough because the two of them were very open about their romance. Greg's wife, C, appeared to be unaware of their actions, as she worked nights when they messed around and slept during the day when they were at work. After gathering proof and completing the paperwork, Jacob came out to review it with me. He intended to sue for divorce on grounds of adultery, neglect, and cruelty. He had lots of images, videos, and audio evidence to back up his claim. I didn't want to hear or see what they had done, especially because I'd seen and heard enough about them to last a lifetime. He also had papers against Greg and intended to sue the firm they worked for because Laura was technically his subordinate and Greg had plainly broken company policy. Furthermore, he intended to denounce Greg to the state bar organization and had papers prepared accusing him of multiple ethics violations. I couldn't help but notice that Laura never phoned the facility or came out to see how I was doing. Apparently, she and Greg were too busy screwing about to notice me. Oh well, I figured, this too would pass. And it did. After 2 months, the authorities raided the firm and detained them. Jacob's process server was also present, delivering the paperwork to all parties involved. My lawyer even contacted the media, which obtained footage of the 2 cheaters being placed in the back of police cruisers. Shocked by the charges and evidence we had against Greg, the business acted fast and settled with Jacob for the majority of what we requested. They also fired both of them and reported Greg to the state bar. CE learned of the arrest that day when Greg called her from the county prison, telling her he was in jail and needed her to be in court for his arraignment so she could post bail. Agent Colin Davis met with Dr. Victor, and the 3 of them took me to the courthouse for my arraignment. CA noticed me as I was brought in for the hearing and ran up to me. "How is he?" she questioned Dr. Victor. I looked up to her. "Better," I replied, seeing her expression. It had been a year since she last heard me talk. "Haven't you heard? Your husband has abused me on several occasions during the last 4 months. At the same time, he has been banging Laura." "You did not know?" "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "I did not know, Ethan. Please believe me, I had no idea what was happening. I've also filed for divorce from Laura and am suing Greg for alienation of affection. If you like, I may offer you my attorney's name in case you decide to file for divorce." "Damn right. I'm divorcing the son of a," she explained. We entered the courthouse and saw the sheriffs bring Greg and Laura in, both dressed in orange jumpsuits, with their wrists and feet shackled and joined to another chain around their waists. They both looked terrible. The state prosecutor requested that both be remanded without bail, citing Greg's potential flight risk and a restraining order against Laura. He also informed the judge that I was going through medical treatment and had filed for divorce. The prosecutor expressed anxiety that Greg would physically retaliate against me. The judge reviewed the documentation in front of him and agreed, ordering them both imprisoned without bail until the hearing, which he scheduled for the following week. As they took Greg and Laura out, she noticed me seated in the back of the courtroom. Her eyes widened as I raised one hand, middle finger out. She caught up to me after Agent Colin Davis rolled me out of court. She halted them and knelt down to speak with me. "Ethan, I'm really sorry about everything. I honestly didn't know." "That's all right, C," I said. "How long are you going to be gone?" she inquired. I shrugged my shoulders. "I don't know," I replied. "Perhaps a couple more weeks. They actually did a great job. I can even walk around now." "That's great. Please stay in touch and let me know how you're doing," CA said. "I will, C," I said. "We really need to go now, miss," Agent Cole stated. CA nodded and stepped up. "I understand. Take care of yourself, Ethan," she said. "Thanks, C," I replied as Agent Cole wheeled me to the van. When we returned to the facility, I was escorted to the physical therapy room, where Na was waiting for me. "About time you showed up," she remarked. "Time to begin." She pushed me through my paces and even gave me extra workouts to compensate for being late. I was sore when she finished with me, but I felt amazing. Megan stayed after dinner to check my vitals and complete her papers. When she was finished, she approached the bed, made sure I was comfortable, sat down, and looked at me for a few moments. Something appeared to be bothering her. "Is everything okay?" I remarked. "You seem to be thinking about something." "I was just wondering about something," she explained. "What?" "Do you find me attractive?" she inquired. "Absolutely. I think you're a wonderful girl and an excellent nurse." "Why?" "It's just, you haven't made a pass at me the entire time you've been here. I was wondering if I had done anything to anger you or if you didn't think me attractive." I smiled at her before replying. "I'm actually very attracted to you," I told you. "It's simply that, for one thing, I'm still married, and secondly, I'm relearning how to move around. I haven't been able to speak for a year. Besides, how about your other patients?" You're my only patient, she explained quietly. Dr. Victor is very particular about who he assigns to the night shift. I see. So, in addition to being a medical genius and a miracle worker, Dr. Victor is also a matchmaker. She laughed at that. It has happened before, she added. Well, Megan, I tend to have a soft spot for shy, attractive redheads. And I'm getting divorced, so there's that. She grinned broadly and her eyes twinkled. Would it be okay if I kissed you goodnight? She inquired. Definitely, I said. She leaned in and softly kissed me. After a second, the delicate kiss evolved into something more sensual, with our tongues battling in one another's lips. When she broke the kiss, I felt something. I am here for you all night, every night. If you ever need anything, call me, okay? I know you're not ready to make love, but I'd love to just spend time with you, Megan murmured quietly. I will, I promise, I replied. She smiled and softly exited the room. I fell asleep thinking about what she said, with images of red-headed angels dancing through my mind all night. The next several days sped by, with Na working me even harder. I discovered that I could walk many miles on the treadmill, and my muscles had improved to the point where I could bench press more weight than ever before. The daily X-rays revealed that my replacement vertebrae were performing even better than Dr. Victor had projected, with the implants repairing nearly all of the damaged nerves. Megan kept me company most evenings by lying on the bed with me and watching television, or simply talking. We would frequently share a bowl of popcorn while watching a movie and snuggle up together, the bowl on our laps. We always finished the evening with a goodnight kiss. I began to feel like a high school boy on a date with the most attractive girl in school. On top of that, I was falling hard for her. By the time Agent Cole and Davis arrived to pick me up for the main portion of Laura and Greg's trial, I no longer required the wheelchair, but Dr. Victor insisted that I use it nevertheless to ensure that I did not injure myself. He accompanied me as well, not only as a witness to my injuries, but also to ensure that I returned home safely. I sat in my chair directly behind the prosecutor, with Dr. Victor beside me. Laura and Greg entered the room and sat down next to their defense counsel. They looked over at me before whispering to their attorney. CA sat behind them, but she didn't seem happy. The jury, which had been chosen the day before, was seated, and the judge entered with the bailiff, issuing the order for everyone to stand. Using the rail in front of me for support, I rose up and noted Greg and Laura's shocked expressions. When the judge entered, he gave the order to sit and we all sat down. Dr. Victor calmly inquired if I was all right, and I nodded yes. The judge began the hearings by reading the lengthy list of allegations, noting that Greg and Laura had both pleaded not guilty. After both sides had finished their opening comments, the court went to the prosecution attorney, who called me as his first witness. Dr. Victor walked beside me to ensure I didn't collapse and then returned to his seat. Greg and Laura exchanged stunned looks as I sat in the witness chair. They were even more surprised when I talked after the bailiff had sworn me in to tell the truth. The prosecutor got up and walked up to me. He started by complimenting me on my improvement, then asked questions about my accident and the year I spent as a quadriplegic. I realized what he was doing. By asking these questions, he was informing the jury about my physical state before I was treated at Dr. Victor's facility. The majority of the inquiries at this point were on my home life. How Laura tried but was unable to care for me, and how she was able to arrange for home health care experts to care for me during the day. And during any of this time, did your wife ever attempt to see to your emotional needs? The prosecuting attorney questioned. No, sir, I said. Did she ever attempt to please you in any way? He asked her. No, she did not, I replied. Had she tried, would she have been successful? Wondered the man. I shake my head. No, I had no feeling from the neck down. I see, he replied. Did she ever hug you or kiss you or spend time with you, maybe reading a book or watching television? I considered my response carefully, but I couldn't recall her doing anything similar. She sometimes gave me a peck on the cheek, but that was about it, I replied. Did she participate in your care? He inquired. Did she feed you, help bathe you, perhaps help you in the bathroom? She tried at first, but she simply wasn't up to it. When did Mr. Wallace come into the picture? Almost from the beginning, I said. Were you friends before your accident? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, we were. They lived next door to us and we had spent time together before to my injury. I see. So you weren't surprised to see him in your apartment? No, I thought we were friendly. They frequently came over, and we would occasionally enjoy a beverage or dinner. You say he and your wife engaged in inappropriate activity in your apartment, the prosecution continued. When did that start? I'm not sure exactly. They could have been doing it while I was in the hospital, but I'm not sure, I have no confirmation of that. He frequently let her cry on his shoulder while they were both present. I believe it was approximately a month after I returned home from the hospital that I first heard them. Heard them? The prosecutor inquired. Yes. I could hear them kissing and moaning like they were making out. Laura wiped her eyes as I recounted what I had heard. Then I heard them in what used to be our bed, being intimate. What happened then? The prosecutor inquired. He would enter my room and harass me when she was showering. One day, he brought in a monitor in a box and said that it was so I could see a real man with my wife. Laura and the jurors let out a collective gasp. Your Honor, the prosecutor remarked as the bailiff brought out a trolley containing a large monitor and a black box into the courtroom. This is the monitor and box Mr. John is talking about. The box is a digital video recorder. The system also includes 2 video cameras, one in Mr. John's master bedroom and the other in his lodging room. We copied several hours of video footage captured by the device. The prosecutor turned back to face me. Is it your testimony that Mr. Wallace used this so you could watch him being intimate with your wife? He was asking. Yes, I said gently. Laura looked at Greg, astonished. You liar, she exclaimed. The judge hammered the gavel. Order in the court, he declared. Laura calmed down, and the prosecutor resumed. Did you know that Mr. Wallace placed a camera in your room as well as the master bedroom? My friend asked me. I shake my head. This was new to me. No sir, I didn't. How did your wife react to this monitor? The prosecution inquired. She thought it was great that he got it for me. Apparently, she assumed it was so I could watch sports on TV. And was it about this time that the abuse against you began? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, it was, I answered. Please tell the court what would typically happen, the prosecution asked. After Greg and my wife had their fun, he would come into my room, turn the monitor off, then lift me up and abuse me. Is it in your testimony that he abused you? The prosecutor inquired. Yes, I said, embarrassed. Was your wife ever present when this occurred? The prosecutor inquired. Not that I'm aware of. He always appeared to finish around the time she was done showering. Afterward, Mom would come into my room and tell me how great it was to have a friend like Greg to look after me. How often did this happen? About 2 or 3 times a week, I answered. For how long? The prosecutor inquired. About 4 months. I heard members of the jury gasp, and when I looked around, I noticed several of them staring at Laura and Greg with venom in their eyes. Laura looked down at the table, while Greg sat stoically, staring straight ahead. So you estimate that this happened about 35 times overall? The prosecutor inquired. About that, yes, I replied. Were you aware that Mr. Wallace recorded his time in your room? My friend asked me. I shake my head. No, I wasn't. The prosecutor looked at the jurors. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wallace recorded himself abusing Mr. John 36 times on this device, he told them. He paused while the jurors took it in. With friends like that, who needs enemies? The prosecutor remarked rhetorically. The defense attorney objected, and the judge upheld his objection. That's all I have for this witness at this time, the prosecution stated. But I reserve the right to recall Mr. John to the stand. Very well, the judge replied. Your witness, Mr. Bradley, he informed the defense attorney. Brad Bradley remained at his table, looking up at me before speaking. Mr. John, I am sorry to hear of your injuries, and I do hope you get better. Thank you, I replied. Just one thing, he added. At any time, did you ever indicate to Mr. Wallace that you did not approve of his alleged actions? I was unable to. I was totally crippled at the time, and I couldn't even speak. So the answer is no then? He asked. That's because I couldn't, I explained, growing agitated. You also failed to alert anyone about what transpired, including your wife. Isn't that correct? He questioned. Now I was upset. That's because I was completely disabled and couldn't, I roared and slammed my fist on the thick wood rail in front of me. For a moment, no one said or did anything. When I drew my hand away, I noticed that I had cracked the rail. I didn't realize I'd hit it so hard. I looked at the judge before speaking. I apologize, Your Honor. I lost my temper. Don't do it again, he told me. I nodded my head. That's all I have for this witness, Bradley added. The judge told me I may leave the stand, and Dr. Victor came to accompany me back to my seat. The prosecutor then summoned Dr. Victor to the stand. He informed the court of my injuries and the extent of my incapacity. He also said that he discovered severe damage, collected samples for evidence and testing, and then did everything he could to repair the harm. He also discussed the procedure he had conducted and my progress since then. And in your professional opinion, the only way for this damage to have been done is for Mr. John to have been abused. Is that right? The prosecutor inquired. Correct, Dr. Victor said. That would also explain the presence of evidence. Thank you, the prosecutor responded. He turned to face the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, the state tested the sample. Further tests and DNA analysis have proven with 99.99% certainty that it belongs to the defendant, Greg Wallace. He turned to face the judge. That is all I have for this witness, Your Honor. Your witness, Mr. Bradley, the court stated. Thank you. Dr. Victor, you run the Arrowhead Institute of Advanced Medical Research, correct? Yes, that is correct, Dr. Victor replied. You engage in some pretty cutting-edge research there, do you not? Bradley asked. Sure, Dr. Victor replied, slipping into his native German as he occasionally did. Bradley took out a piece of paper and started reading. Each of us has different protection mechanisms that assist us deal with harsh events. Sometimes we revert to an alternate version of ourselves, which could be regarded as an alter ego. The alter ego could present itself in a variety of ways. An otherwise calm, unassuming person may suddenly become noisy, arrogant, and domineering, for example. Those who are unfamiliar with that person's behavior will have a very different opinion of him or her, he read before returning his gaze to Dr. Victor. You also talk of an inner beast that is dormant within every one of us. According to your writings, you claim to have discovered a means to unleash the so-called beast to assist with a certain scenario. Is that correct? He questioned. I did write that, and yes, my research has found that to be the case, replied the doctor. Isn't it true that you once worked with Mr. Bill Dalton to help him discover his purported inner beast? Bradley explained that simply saying yes or no would suffice. I worked with Mr. Dalton, yes, Dr. Victor said. The exact nature of my work, however, is a matter of doctor-patient confidentiality. Is it not true that toward the end of his treatment Mr. Dalton's house mysteriously blew up? Bradley asked. The prosecutor quickly protested. Irrelevant, Your Honor. Your Honor, Bradley explained, we all saw Mr. John's reaction. If you'll allow me, I believe there is a connection. I'll allow it for the time being, Mr. Bradley, the judge remarked. But I would appreciate it if you could make your point and move on. I will, Your Honor. Thank you, Bradley replied. He turned back to Dr. Victor. Are you aware of what happened to Mr. Dalton's home? Bradley asked. I remember seeing something about it on the news, Dr. Victor remarked. I also recall the police claiming that Mrs. Dalton and her live-in partner were manufacturing medicines with highly volatile materials. I don't see any relation to this situation. According to police reports, Mrs. Dalton was seen running out of the house screaming about a monster, Bradley recalled. Apparently a result of the drugs she and her lover were manufacturing, remarked Victor's doctor. Your Honor, this is absolutely irrelevant to the case before the court today, as Mr. Bradley is fully aware. I insist that this line of questioning be stopped, the prosecutor stated. I tend to agree. Mr. Bradley, I've been more than fair. Please move on. Very well, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness, Bradley stated. The judge dismissed Dr. Victor, and the case continued. The prosecutor summoned state agents, who searched my residence. Both claimed they discovered what looked to be proof of abuse. Then he called home healthcare nurses, who testified that they saw symptoms of physical abuse. They documented it in their records, but the home care facility never followed up, thus the reports fell through the bureaucratic cracks. I have one last piece of evidence, Your Honor, the prosecutor stated. With your permission, I would like to play a portion of video taken of the abuse against Mr. John. Very well, the judge replied. The prosecutor looked at the jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you is shocking, he told them. I take no joy in this, but I believe it's necessary that you see for yourselves what Mr. John had to endure for months on end. He switched on the monitor and started playing the footage. The jury frowned as they saw Greg clearly abuse me. The prosecutor paused the video and enlarged the image. Ladies and gentlemen, let there be no doubt in your mind who is committing this heinous act to a man who once thought of him as a friend, he told the audience. After the jurors looked at the image for a few moments, tears streamed down my cheeks from shame. Again, the prosecutor paused the video. He stared at the stunned jurors. I rest my case, he stated with distaste. Mr. Bradley, you may present your case, the judge instructed once the prosecutor sat down. Bradley stood up and summoned Laura to the stand. Mrs. John, he asked, is it true that you had an affair with Mr. Wallace? Yes, it is, she replied calmly. Can you tell us why? He inquired. My husband, Ethan, was injured so badly, and I felt lost and hopeless, she told me. He was there when I needed someone to weep on. Yes, we had an affair, but it was nothing more. Were you aware of what Mr. Wallace did to your husband? Bradley asked. No, I wasn't. If you had known, would you have done anything to stop him? Bradley asked. Yes, I would have. Thank you, Mrs. John. That's it for now. Your witness, Mr. Foster, he remarked while sitting down. The prosecutor stood up and approached the monitor. He selected an image from the video that clearly showed both my face and Laura in the same frame. Mrs. John, he started. You testified that you were unaware your husband was being abused. Is this correct? Yes. Look at his face in that video, the prosecutor added. The hurt and humiliation were clear to everybody who saw it. Do you expect this court to think that you could look at your husband of 3 years in that state and not notice something was wrong? It didn't cross my mind at the time, she told me. Before Mrs. Wallace brought healthcare workers into the home, did you ever once feed or clean your husband? The defense attorney said. I tried, but I wasn't very good at it, she stated. What happens afterward? Did you even try to help? No, she replied gently. And why was that? The prosecutor inquired. I do not know. I felt Greg was helping him, and I had no idea what to do. The truth is, you basically abandoned him, didn't you? Bradley responded to the prosecutor's query with an objection. I withdraw the question, Foster promptly said. You said your affair with Mr. Wallace was purely physical, correct? That's right, she replied. And you claimed in your testimony that you still love your husband, right? Yes, she answered. Foster returned to his table, pulling out an audio recorder and a document from his briefcase. He walked back to the bench. Your Honor, this is a written report done by Samuel Jenkins, a private investigator hired by Mr. John's attorney, he stated, presenting the paper to the judge. A copy of this report and the audio were provided to Mr. Bradley, as evidenced by the accompanying affidavit. The report refers to an audio recording of a conversation between the defendants while out on a dinner date shortly after Mr. John was admitted to Arrowhead. With your permission, I'd like to play the audio for the jury. Very well, the judge replied. Foster activated the recording button, and Laura and Greg's chat could be heard in court. So have you given any thought to what we discussed? Greg's voice is heard on the recording. I have, and I admit I'm intrigued, Laura replied. Well, what do you think? I must admit, the last few months with you have been fantastic, she remarked in the recording. Much better than my life with Ethan has ever been. Are you sure we can pull this off? Of course, Greg replied. I'm a lawyer, you know. I can have a judge do whatever I want. It would be easy to declare Ethan a state ward. He can't care for himself, and you're clearly not trained to do so. Frankly, I can't stomach the idea of it, she told me. I mean, feeding him like a baby, wiping his drool, changing his diaper and cleaning his buttocks, yuck. It makes me nauseous just to think about it. I need a man, a whole man, a genuine man like you. You and I both know this Victor guy won't be able to do anything for him, Greg told him. Every doctor stated he'd be an invalid for the rest of his life. Once he is judged incompetent, we may seize his massive settlement and live like kings in Costa Rica or somewhere else. Wouldn't that be preferable to staying here and wiping the excrement off little Timmy? Yeah, it would, she answered. What about C though? Laura asked. Things haven't been great between us for a long time, Greg told me. She wants children, but I don't, and I'm tired of her continual pestering. I just want to be sure you won't go soft on me and tell me you still love him when we start dating. That will not happen. I love only you. The prosecutor paused the recording and looked at Laura. I felt like my heart had been ripped out again. So you and your lover intended to declare your spouse incompetent so that you could take his settlement money and go to Costa Rica? So were you telling the truth to your sweetheart or in court? Which is it, Mrs. John? Please tell me now so that I can decide whether or not to prosecute you with perjury. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she was forced to openly confront her own deception. I don't know, she exclaimed. I still loved him, but I loved Greg too. She looked over at me. Please, Ethan, forgive me. I shook my head, turning away from her. Foster glanced at her with disgust. I'm done with this witness, he stated before walking away. The court excused her, and Bradley summoned Greg to the stand. So Mr. Wallace, Bradley said when Greg was sworn in, we've seen video of you and Mr. John. There is no denying what we all witnessed. I only have one question. Did Mr. John ever tell you that he didn't approve of your actions? Not once, Greg answered with a snarl. Thank you, Bradley replied, turning away. Your witness, he informed Foster, who was already on his feet. Mr. Wallace, he said. You graduated from Harvard Law School, did you not? Yes, I did, Greg announced happily. And you graduated near the top of your class, didn't you? I did. In fact, you're highly regarded as a top litigator in your firm, Foster told me. Bradley objected. Relevance, Your Honor? Your Honor, I intend to show that Mr. Wallace not only knows the law, but he knew that Mr. John could not possibly have given consent, Foster told you. Go ahead, Mr. Foster, the judge instructed. Thank you. He turned back to Greg. You knew that Mr. John was disabled, didn't you? Greg sighed and said nothing. Didn't you? Foster bellowed. Yes, I knew, Greg said. And you knew that the law in this state says persons with Mr. John's disabilities are incapable of giving consent, didn't you? Foster inquired. Yes, I guess so, Greg said. Foster glanced at him with hatred for a few moments before shaking his head. I'm finished with this witness, Foster replied, walking away. Any more witnesses, Mr. Bradley? The court inquired. Bradley shakes his head. No, Your Honor, I rest my case. Very well, we'll take 15 minutes and reconvene to hear closing arguments. The judge pounded his gavel and everyone exited the courtroom. Dr. Victor gave me a cup of water. How are you holding up? He inquired as I sipped my water. I'll be okay, I assured him. He patted my shoulder. Good. Foster looked to check how I was doing. I'm sorry you had to relive all of that, he said. I believe we have made an impression on the jurors. We will see. This is nearly over, Ethan. Remain patient. Thanks, I replied. Soon, the break was finished, and everyone returned to the courtroom. Greg, Laura, and Mr. Bradley appeared less assured than they had earlier in the day. CA looked angry enough to spit nails. This was the first time she'd heard much about it. When the judge returned, the bailiff directed everyone to stand. All right, Mr. Bradley, present your closing statement, the court said. Bradley stood forward to face the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a difficult case for all of us. And contrary to popular belief, we hope Mr. John recovers. We have stipulated that the alleged abuse occurred with Mr. John. We're not debating that point, but this is a case about consent, or lack thereof. Mr. John confessed under oath that he never told my client that he did not provide approval. Mrs. John was unaware that anything was amiss, and she had no idea the alleged abuse had occurred. As a result, you are forced to conclude that my clients are not guilty. Thank you. He took a seat. The judge moved for Foster to make his final statements. On his way, Foster turned on the monitor, which displayed the image of Greg abusing me. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your participation today. I realize this has been really difficult for all of you. The defense has attempted to avoid the issue by stating that Mr. John never stated that he did not consent to what was being done to him. There's only one problem: Mr. John is crippled. He could not speak or defend himself. According to the law in this state, people with disabilities like his are unable to give or deny consent. Mr. Bradley is aware of this, as is the defendant, Greg Wallace, who is a Harvard Law School graduate. They have admitted to the activities against Mr. John. You've seen the video and heard the audio. You know the defendants plan to fraudulently declare Mr. John incapable in order to grab what was rightfully his and depart the country. Wallace took Mr. John's wife with the intention of taking Mr. John's money while leaving his own wife high and dry. You have heard the defendants' plan and scheme against Mr. John. The defense has not raised any doubts about what happened. The defendant Wallace abused Mr. John 36 times, and Mrs. John did nothing to stop it. In this state, abuse and willful neglect of a disabled person is considered a hate crime. That is why I am advocating for the highest punishment permitted by law. The state has done its part. Now I ask that you do yours and give Mr. John the justice he deserves. Thank you. After Foster had taken his seat, the judge issued his orders to the jury and sent them off to deliberate. He then ordered the rest of the court to recess. Dr. Victor and I entered the corridor, where Jacob waited. I just wanted to let you know that Laura signed the divorce papers, he told me. She isn't contesting anything. I just came back from filing them. The judge will sign off on them in a day or two, and you will be free in 6 months. Free? I asked cynically. Why don't I feel free then? You've been through a lot, young man, Dr. Victor explained. Trust me, it'll get better. I hope so. And I think I know just the person who can help you feel better, the doctor added with a knowing smile. You mean Megan? I inquired. Dr. Victor grinned and nodded. Ja, he answered. She really likes you, you know. It was my turn to smile. I like her too, a lot. Good, Dr. Victor replied. Just be careful though. I don't want you to have sex for at least another 6 to 8 weeks. I don't want you to put too much strain on your back just yet, he said with a smile. By the way, I said, what's up with that rail? How did I crack that thing? I barely slapped it. Must be the supplements we've been giving you, he said with a joke. That and Na's physical therapy. Nothing to do with that inner beast stuff, I said. He laughed. No, not at all. That's an entirely separate project. Besides, I would not recommend it for you, especially with the custom-built vertebrae we've installed. We talked for a little longer, and after about an hour, Foster poked his head into the corridor. Jury's back in already? I asked. He nodded his head. That was fast. Yeah, it was, Foster replied. Hopefully that's good news for us. We went through the motions again as everyone returned to the courtroom. The bailiff directed us all to stand as the judge entered, and we all took our seats. On his signal, the judge inquired, has the jury reached a decision? We have, the jury foreman said. The bailiff received the paperwork from the foreman and delivered it to the judge. After reading it to himself, he told Laura and Greg to stand up. Bradley stood with them. How do you find the charges against defendant Greg Wallace? The judge inquired. We find the defendant Greg Wallace guilty on all charges, the foreman stated. And on the charges against defendant Laura John, how do you find? We find the defendant Laura John not guilty on the charge of accessory to abuse of a disabled person, Your Honor, and guilty on all the other charges, said the deputy district attorney. The judge nodded his head. Very well, he responded, facing the defendants. He poured his rage on them. I've seen and heard a lot in this courtroom over the years, but nothing as awful and egregious as what I observed here today. The two of you make me sick to my stomach. You have not only mocked your marriages, but also the legal profession. That is why I am handing you the maximum penalty permitted by law. Mr. Wallace, as a well-trained lawyer and court official, your actions disgust me beyond words. At the prosecutor's request, I am sentencing you to at least 450 years of hard labor. That's 12 years for each of the 36 charges of maltreatment, plus an additional 20 years for committing a hate crime. I additionally added 8 years for conspiracy to conduct fraud. Mrs. John, I disagree with the jury's not guilty finding. Personally, I don't understand how anyone with more than 2 brain cells could be unaware that your husband was being abused. Nonetheless, I shall follow the verdict. I am, however, giving you the maximum punishment for criminal negligence and conspiracy to conduct fraud, which is 15 years in jail under state rules, making you available for parole in 10 years. He raised his gavel, but Bradley spoke to the judge. Your Honor, he replied, Mrs. John has just informed me that divorce papers have been filed, and she wishes to speak with Mr. John before being taken into custody. Is that acceptable with you, Mr. John? I can give her a couple of minutes, the judge explained. Your Honor, that's fine, I said. The judge nodded and remarked, very well. He slammed his gavel, declaring the court dismissed. Laura approached me as deputies prepared to take Greg away. You look good, she replied. Thank you, I replied. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I honestly had no idea what he was doing to you. I would have done everything I could to stop it if I had known. I think you convinced the jury of that, I told them. I agree with the judge, however. I find it difficult to believe. You are not a foolish woman. At any rate, you'll have 15 years to consider it. Was there anything else? Yes, she responded. I wanted you to know I signed the divorce papers and I'm not going to fight you over it. That's what I heard, I informed her. Don't you want to know why it happened? She inquired. I shook my head. I really don't care, I told her. I'm sure it was all for greed and lust. You cheated me, plain and simple. The why really doesn't matter anymore. Do you think you could ever forgive me? She asked. Why is it all you cheating losers think you can come crawling and begging for forgiveness? I asked. You certainly didn't care about me when I needed you the most. To answer your question, no. I do not intend to ever forgive you. Instead, I'll do my best to forget you exist. Was there anything else? I know you won't believe me, but I do love you, she replied. I just wanted to tell you that before they take me to jail. You're correct, I don't believe you, but thank you for saying so. I suppose you should get moving. Those deputies don't seem happy over there. Okay. Goodbye, Ethan, she replied. She walked away with tears in her eyes. At that moment I had absolutely no feelings for her. As I stood up, she approached me. How are you doing, Ethan? You look better now than you have in a long time. Thanks. I'm doing a lot better now, thanks to Dr. Victor. I just wanted to apologize for what my loser soon-to-be ex-husband did to you. I appreciate that, I told her. Did you get in touch with Jacob? Yes, I did. Greg's father insisted on a prenuptial agreement when we married, and it includes a very strict infidelity clause, so Jacob will have a field day with it. I'm glad to hear it, I said. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Thanks. I might need to borrow several copies of those videos from you. No problem, I responded. Whatever you need. I'll be gone a little longer, but I'm sure Jacob can make do with what he already has. One last thing, she added. I still have the key you gave me right after the accident. I'll clean up your apartment and remove Laura's belongings if you like. That would be a big help, see. Thanks. Not a problem. Good luck, and I'll see you soon, she said, kissing me on the cheek. We watched as she departed. I couldn't believe Greg was so dumb to cheat on such a nice woman. Are you finished flirting with all the women? Dr. Victor inquired. I'd like to get back to work if you don't mind. Works for me, I replied. But how are we going to get back? No problem, we'll take care of that for you, Agent Cole stated from behind. After all, we're the ones who brought you here at Dr. Victor's insistence. I sat down in the wheelchair, and Cole drove me out to the car, where we all climbed in. Actually, I was relieved to have the wheelchair. I'd been up and down much of the day and was feeling fatigued and achy. We returned to the facility, and Dr. Victor wheeled me into my room, where Megan waited for me. After supper, she helped me get ready for bed before going into the bathroom to change into her sleepwear, which was actually a long t-shirt. How are you feeling? She inquired as she slid into bed with me, wiped out. It's been a long day, I explained. She kissed me and rested her head against my shoulder. Yes, it has, she replied. I realize it has been difficult, but it had to be done. Now you can start putting all of that behind you, and I'll be here to assist you in any way I can. Before I spoke, I took a long look at her face. I said, I love you, Megan, without thinking. She smiled softly and kissed my lips. And I love you, Ethan, she added. She rested her head on my shoulder and draped an arm across my chest. I felt happier than I had been in a long time. We soon fell asleep together. They exhausted me over the next 5 weeks. In drill instructor mode, encouraged me to go farther and quicker with each session. On top of that, I was seeing the counselor twice a week to help me overcome the trauma I had experienced the previous year. Every day, they took x-rays to determine the condition of my spine. Megan stayed every night in my bed and we grew to know each other rather well. Finally, Dr. Victor said that I had recovered sufficiently to be sent home. By then, my body was in better shape than it had ever been, but Doctor told me to avoid strenuous exertion for another 3 weeks. He also scheduled me to come in twice a month for the following year so they could check my back. I was eager to get home, but I also knew I'd miss Megan. On the day I was supposed to leave, I wrote her a note in which I expressed my feelings for her. I also offered her to come visit me whenever she wanted. I finished the note as Dr. Victor entered my room in a wheelchair. I stared at him, puzzled. After all, I could already walk on my own. He shrugged his shoulders. Regulations, he stated. I understand. As I sat in the wheelchair, I wished I'd never have to use one again. He pushed me to the pickup location outside and I glanced about while waiting for the Arrowhead van. Instead, I noticed a dark blue Toyota RAV4 pulling up. The driver's side door opened, revealing Megan, my red-headed angel of compassion. She came around to open the passenger door for me. Surprised, I stared at Dr. Victor. Megan has a new assignment, he announced with a smile. She'll be your live-in caretaker, that is, unless you have any objections. Absolutely not, I answered, smiling. I shook his hand. Thank you, Dr. Victor, for everything. You're welcome, he replied with a smile. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. He stared at Megan. Please take care of our boy, okay? I will, she replied with a smile. After assisting me inside, she got into the automobile. I noticed numerous luggage had been stuffed into the back of the car. So how long are you going to be assigned to me? I asked. It depends on how long you need me. How long do you think that will be? Conservative estimate. I would say at least 60 years, I responded. Is that okay with you? Darn straight it is, I replied. She kissed me on the lips before pulling away and heading home. When we went home, I marked the calendar with the day Dr. Victor indicated I could resume normal activities. As it turned out, that was the day after my divorce from Laura was finalized. CA met and married a doctor 2 years after her divorce. I never visited Laura in prison, but I did understand that she was undergoing treatment. After 15 years, she was freed on parole and worked as a server at a truck stop cafe on the highway. Megan and I married around 6 months after my divorce was finalized, which was a good thing because she told me a few weeks after we returned from our honeymoon that we were expecting children. We had 2 more children after that and felt that was sufficient for the time being. Our love for one another remained strong, and when our youngest child departed for college, we celebrated with an around-the-world trip. Even after all these years, she remains my gorgeous red-headed angel of mercy. My vertebrae strengthened, and it appeared that I was in better shape than I had ever been. The implants also worked, and all of the nerve damage I had sustained from the accident was reversed. Dr. Victor successfully repeated the operation multiple times over the next 10 years, and the treatment is now awaiting final approval. As I reflect on my life, I can't help but think of John Milton's quote, "Every cloud has a silver lining." Yes, I went through hell for a year after that truck hit me. It was my dark cloud. But what I have today is better than any silver lining. Am I the asshole for going low contact with my parents after they hit a hereditary illness, putting my child at risk? Edit, most of you figured it out anyway. It is called Huntington's. Update, I ended up telling my siblings. We met at my sister's house, and I just came out with, "I have Huntington's. It's hereditary. You should both get checked." My brother started panicking. He and his fiancée just started trying to get pregnant, and now he's terrified. He's furious with our parents and fully on my side. He confronted them right after, and now we're both going low contact. My sister was more shocked and distant, but she said she'll get tested. My parents are pissed that I told them without waiting for the right time, but I don't regret it. My siblings deserve the truth, and I wasn't going to let them live in ignorance like I did. I, 28F, recently found out I have a serious hereditary illness that's going to screw up my life, and I am so mad I can barely type this out. It's a degenerative illness, no cure, nothing. My body's just gonna slowly get worse. And the kicker, my parents have known this could happen my whole life and never said a damn word. This illness runs in my family. My dad's mom had it. His sister, my aunt, died from it a few years ago. I was living overseas when she passed, and my parents told me it was cancer. Cancer. They lied right to my face. It wasn't until I got diagnosed that they finally came clean and admitted she had the same illness I do. When I confronted them, my dad wouldn't even give me a straight answer. I asked if he had it too and he dodged every single question, acting like I was overreacting. My mom, on the other hand, tried to justify it by saying they didn't want me living in fear. Are you kidding me? I could have been prepared. Instead, they chose to let me walk into this blind. And here's where it gets worse. I have a 2-year-old son. My child might have this, and they never told me I was at risk. I could have had him tested, made informed decisions, anything. But no, they took that from me and now I live in constant fear for him too. Then my mom had the nerve to ask me if I would have rather not been born than deal with this. Can you believe that? She turned it around on me, like I'm the monster for even thinking about it. And you know what? Yes, I said it. Yes, I would rather not have been born than deal with this disease. They made a selfish choice, and now I'm paying for it. They knew the risks and did it anyway, for themselves. They wanted kids, and now I'm stuck with this. I called them selfish, and I meant every word. Now they're begging me not to tell my younger siblings. They don't know about this yet, haven't been tested, and my parents want to keep it that way. They're hoping they'll get lucky, but I'm not going to lie to them. I refuse to let them be blindsided like I was. They deserve to know the truth. I've been in low contact with my parents. I can't stand to even think about them right now. My mom keeps trying to guilt trip me, saying they were just trying to protect me. Protect me from what? The truth? No, they weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves, from the guilt of knowing they passed this on, and now they want me to protect them too. But I won't. I love my son and my siblings too much to lie to them, AITA, for going LC and refusing to keep their secret, even though they claim they were just trying to protect me. Am I the asshole for stepping in to defend a teenage cashier after a rude customer made her cry at the supermarket? So, this happened yesterday, and I'm still wondering if I overreacted. I, 35F, was doing my usual weekly grocery shopping at a local supermarket. It was a busy afternoon, and the line at the checkout was pretty long. I was waiting patiently when I noticed the woman in front of me, probably mid-50s, becoming increasingly agitated as the teenage cashier, who couldn't have been older than 17, was scanning her items. The cashier seemed a bit flustered. I could tell she was probably new, making a few mistakes here and there, but nothing serious. The older woman, however, was not having it. She started muttering under her breath, rolling her eyes, and tapping her foot. Finally, When the cashier accidentally scanned an item twice and needed to call for a supervisor to void it, the woman lost it. She started berating the poor girl, saying things like, "How hard can it be to do this job? You can't even do basic tasks, you're wasting people's time." She just kept going on, and the more she yelled, the more flustered the cashier got until she started tearing up. I stood there for a second, hoping the lady would cool down, but she didn't. The poor cashier was clearly trying her best to keep it together. That's when I stepped in. I said to her, "You don't have the right to treat someone like that. She's doing her best, and it's just a mistake. If you're so unhappy, maybe you should try working like her for a day and see how easy it is." The woman looked stunned and told me to mind my own business. I replied, "It is my business when you're making a kid cry over something as stupid as groceries." The cashier's supervisor had arrived by then and stepped in to handle the situation, and the woman stormed off still muttering and cursing. After she left, the cashier thanked me with teary eyes, but a couple of people behind me in line gave me looks like I was the one who had done something wrong. Now I'm second-guessing myself. So Reddit, AITA for telling her off? My husband abruptly adopted a Burmese python, which caused me anxiety and fear. Years later, our marriage fell apart, leading to divorce. Original post, May 7, 2015. Maybe this would be more appropriate on our snakes, but this problem is less about the python itself and more about my relationship with my husband. So personally, I don't think so. 6 months ago, our corn snake unexpectedly died. My husband and I were both very upset. He was a cute little guy and still very young. My husband has owned several small reptiles during his lifetime, and he told me he was thinking of trying a milk snake this time instead of a corn or a garter. Instead, 2 months after our corn died, he came home with a baby Burmese python. Apparently it's always been his dream to own a Burmese. Not only am I pissed that he got something like that without consulting me, on the upside, where we live they are legal. But I had several reservations that have only grown since we've owned it. I have GAD and that thing triggers my anxiety like no other. When I was doing research about Burmese pythons, I kept reading stories about them killing pets, children, and even their owners. So now I'm freaked out and have barely slept for 4 months. This is made worse by the fact that my husband has no experience with large snakes, and the larger the python grows, the more it shows, and also by us having a cat. The other snakes we've had, our corn snake, and my husband's old garter snake, pose no threat, but now I constantly worry that the python is going to get out and eat her. I've taken to locking the cat in our bedroom at night, which interferes with our sleep since she meows and scratches at the door, and I constantly worry about her when she's home alone. I'll reiterate, this thing is fucking huge. He is already 6 feet long. I'm home more than my husband, so I have to feed it and change its substrates often. I hate doing both. So much. Especially now that he's graduated to eating rabbits and pigs. I honestly think that since my husband bought him without consulting me, that caring for it should be his sole job. But I'm not going to let it go hungry or live in its own waste out of pride. I honestly don't think we'll be able to give this snake the best quality of life, which I think is essential for all pets. He's getting too big for the tank he's in, which is his third since we've gotten him, and I don't think we have the room in our house for the enclosure my husband wants to build him. His food is very expensive and eats into our savings, but it's what he needs, so we can't downgrade. The python does not deserve to live in a tiny space and eat inadequate food because my husband wanted one as a kid. At the same time, it's a good possibility it could eat us out of house and home. I don't want kids while we own a python, and these things can live up to 20 years. I don't want to ever have children, which I've dreamed of, because of a python. Because of all these reasons, but especially the ones about our cat and its quality of life, I think we should rehome the python, preferably to a wildlife sanctuary or something. I've gently brought all of this up to my husband. How much mental anguish it causes me, how worried I am for our cat, how the snake is unsustainable, and all he's done is tell me to get over it, accuse me of not caring about his happiness, and tell me I'm being prejudiced against animals that aren't cute and cuddly. None of this is true, not even the last accusation. I liked his smaller snakes a lot. How can I communicate productively with my husband about this issue? He already loves this snake, and I think that's getting in the way of him seeing reason. Edit, fucked up the title. My husband is male. Edit 2. For the snake people, I acknowledge now that our husbandry is probably wrong, proving my point even more. Also, I have been informed that the snake probably wasn't a baby if it's at this size now, so take that into account. I am not the most knowledgeable about snakes. TL.dr, my husband adopted a Burmese python without consulting me. For a variety of reasons, most of all that I worry that it could kill us and the cat, that we don't have enough experience with large reptiles, and that its conditions are too expensive. I think we should rehome it. My husband thinks this means I hate snakes and is offended. I want to rehome the python. I need advice on how to communicate with him in a way that will make him see my perspective. Relevant comments, additional info, OOP on her husband's rebuttals to her arguments. Here they were. As far as worrying about the python getting out and killing the cat/future kids us. I won't let it get out. You need to go on new anxiety medication. Never mind the fact that both the corn and the garter escaped from their tanks. Well, what are you going to do? Let it starve just because you don't like it? That's cruel. He says that we have room for the enclosure and that we'll find money to keep buying it food. He says I'm ridiculous to not want babies while we have a python and says everything will be fine. I don't find any of his rebuttals particularly compelling because they're just, no, that won't happen to a concern of mine without explaining why it won't happen. Update 1, May 14, 2015. First of all, I have to say thank you for the outpouring of support I got, especially from the reptile enthusiasts who happen to be browsing this sub. You guys are awesome. Now I just want to say at the beginning what everyone wants to hear, the snake is gone and my cat is all right. Here's how it happened. Thursday night while I was replying to people in my post, several people suggested talking to my husband's friend, who owns Burmese pythons, is an experienced reptile keeper, and could be a huge help. I was too blinded by the situation, my own anxiety to even think of that. I messaged him on Facebook Thursday night and told him the situation. He was shocked at just how bad things were, but apparently he tried to warn my husband that owning small snakes and then jumping to a burn is like thinking owning house cats makes you qualified to own a tiger, but my husband didn't listen. He's been busy going to reptile shows, dude breeds venomous cobras, he's kind of a badass, so he only saw the snake in person once when we just got it and was immediately disturbed when I told him about the overfeeding. My husband's desire to start it on live food, and the fact that it free roams and is handed alone. He told me he'd come over the next day, Friday, and give my husband a real talk, as well as do anything he could to help us rehome it. I decided I couldn't live another day in the house like that and neither could my cat, so Friday morning I moved out to my mother's while my husband was at work. It was a bit sneaky, but I knew that if I tried to leave while he was home he'd try to convince me to stay. I called him on his lunch break though and told him I'd left until the snake was gone. He was very upset, but started accusing me of being so petty as to let a snake wreck our marriage. I had nothing productive to say to that. So I told him I'd talk to him later. Well, my husband's friend was so angry at what he saw of the snake that when he got to the house when my husband was home from work he gave him the tongue lashing of his life, and told him in plain terms that now that he saw how woefully inadequate we were as big snake keepers there was no way he was going to let the snake stay at our house. Being yelled at really affected him. When my husband drove over to my mother's to talk to me he looked like a kicked puppy. He broke down and told me that he loved me, that he was sorry for the hell he'd put me through, and that it had taken having reason yelled to him by an expert for him to really see what was going on and that he understood now that the snake could no longer live with us. I know that at that point that the sorrow he felt was due to having his snake taken away, not of real understanding, not yet. So don't worry, he's not completely off the hook. It was cathartic to hear though. His friend contacted a herpetology society he works with regularly and then, a member of that society whose specialty is rehabilitating snakes that irresponsible pet owners get and then mistreat on his ranch. So the snake went yesterday to this guy's ranch, where he'll be fed the right food, and go on a diet, apparently, and live in a space big enough for him. My husband and I have talked a lot about this and he acknowledged that his fervent desire to fulfill his childhood dream made him careless and selfish, that he wasn't trying to be malicious towards me, but he just wanted the snake so badly he'd do and say anything to keep it. It still seems like, though, that he hasn't learned, which I'm not expecting this early but is still a bit disappointing. He talked yesterday about getting a ball python and I put my foot down. I don't think we should get another snake for a long time. On Sunday I sat him down and asked him to tell me the truth of how he got the python, because walking into a pet shop for a milk snake and just finding a Burmese was sounding more and more implausible the more I thought about it. He admitted that he arranged to get one with a breeder online while he was telling me he wanted a little snake, meaning he was actively lying to me. This breeder is also a state away, meaning my husband participated in something illegal when he met up with him to get it, since transporting Burmese pythons across state lines is against the Lacey Act. I'm very angry about this. I'm upset about his lies, and I'm upset that he blew me off for months. He admitted he lied just because he knew I'd say no, which shows such an immaturity that almost disgusts me. I'm upset that he broke the law. I'm upset that he only listened to what I told him when it came from someone else. Apparently he's been having a quarter-life crisis that he didn't tell me about, because he feels that he should have accomplished more with his life at 26, he never went to college. I feel sympathy for him. But that's no excuse to treat me badly. I moved back home with Kitty last night, but our marriage is in severe jeopardy right now due to the lying and the lack of respect my husband has shown me. But I made vows to stick with him and I don't take those lightly. We're going to be getting counseling, which I hope will make him really see what was wrong with what he did, rather than a knee-jerk response to being in trouble, so to speak, and will strengthen us. If not, well, I'll have to consider my options. P.S. People were saying in the other post that we were actually feeding the snake guinea pigs and that I was lying to make the snake look bad. Well, I was fudging the truth, but not the way. We were feeding it dead piglets. My husband's cousin owns a working ranch with several pigs, and my husband was buying them from him for a pretty penny. I didn't want to say it because I thought people would focus on the snake eating baby animals and start calling for its blood instead of offering me advice. TL.dr. I went to my mother's with my cat and my husband's reptile keeper friend caused him to see reason. The snake is gone, and I'm back with my very happy and healthy kitty. However, our marriage was severely hurt by this whole thing, and we're going to be getting counseling. Update to June 13, 2015. Hi, I'm back. The snake is still gone, but I guess I'm coming back out of desperation. People messaged me wanting to know how I was doing anyway. On the surface, therapy has been going well. My husband has been doing everything right. He's been contrite, open-minded, and treats me like a princess at all times. I can tell at home that he's making a conscious effort to listen to my opinions and thoughts, and incorporate our therapist's suggestions into our lives. I feel like the biggest bitch saying this, but I don't think it's enough. Over these past weeks I've had to come to terms with the fact that something about how I view my husband has fundamentally changed. And finally, after extensive soul-searching a few days ago, I realized what it was. I have no respect for his intelligence anymore, after all this. That is very, very important to me. And now it's just gone and I don't know how it can come back without him getting a personality overhaul. It killed my physical attraction to him. I normally have a high libido and prior to all this we made love 4 to 5 times a week. Now, since all this went down we've been intimate 3 times. To be fair, while the snake was here we were down to 2 to 3 times a week, but it was still more frequent than this. Despite all the changes he's making, he's still himself and I don't think I can like who I know him to be now. He's still his goofy, absent-minded self who needs me to balance the checkbook and pack his lunch. I can't respect that anymore. I don't want to be his mom or a naggy sitcom wife. I used to love doing these things for him. Throughout our relationship I've taken care of him, patched him up and helped him solve his problems. I always saw it as the ultimate expression of love. Now I'm just sick of it. He can tell something's still wrong. He's irritated about my lack of forgiveness and lack of a sex drive lately when he's objectively doing all the right things. But his lack of understanding towards my apprehension makes my feelings even more pronounced. I realized the other day that I love him dearly as a friend. I've known him since I was 9 years old but no longer as a husband. That devastates me. I can't believe I'm thinking divorce after less than a year of marriage. I feel like such a failure. I haven't broached these feelings in therapy yet, because they crystallized only a few days ago. But I don't know how to start because I know saying them will mean my marriage will be over. I have talked to my mom and friends about this, and they all tell me to wait longer, to stick it out, because I made vows. But I feel like I found out something fundamental about my husband that I wish I never had, and that nothing can be the same now. TL.er. I think I'm going to have to divorce my husband and it's killing me inside. Update 3 October 14, 2024, 9 years later. Basically, my ex-husband brought home a Burmese python after telling me he wanted a milk snake. I was really scared of it and anxious and he was dismissive of my worries. I ended up getting the snake shipped off to a reptile ranch, but it absolutely shook my trust in my ex because he was lying to me. It also made me realize he relied on me to do everything for him like a second mother and that I hated that. I really tried to work through the feelings I posted in the second update, but after 3 months, we separated. It's totally okay if you judge me for this because I judge myself. After being separated for half a year, we ended up having sex. My grandma had just died. I was devastated. And he came to the funeral to support me and because he'd known her forever and loved her too. We went home together after the family lunch and we ended up having comfort sex. Neither of us wanted kids at that point, but my IUD had slipped into my cervix at some point before this and I ended up getting pregnant. Both of us were unsure about introducing a kid into our relationship, but decided to get back together and make another effort. I had always wanted to be a mom, and didn't want to abort. We found out pretty early into the pregnancy that it was actually a molar pregnancy, meaning that instead of a normal fetus, I was pregnant with a tumor. I had the mole removed, but I was one of those lucky people who develops cancer from their molar pregnancy. Luckily the cancer was caught when I was only at stage 2 and responded really well to chemotherapy. I've been cancer-free since 2016. However, my ex's behavior when I was extremely sick from chemo, we had stayed together after losing the pregnancy, caused me to put my foot down and want a divorce. He wouldn't or couldn't pick up the slack around the house and I couldn't deal with it anymore. I felt like I couldn't depend on him for anything, not even when I had cancer. Literally a week after I was told I was cancer-free, I told him I was moving out and wanted a divorce. I lived with my mom for a year while our divorce was being finalized and a bit after it, and then decided to get a job in a new city because I needed a new beginning. I also decided to fulfill a dream of mine I'd been mulling over for a while and went back to college to get my BSN in 2017. I graduated in 2019 because I was in an accelerated program for people who already have another degree, and I now work as a neonatal nurse. The job can be really wearing and difficult, but it's so amazing watching tiny and sick babies grow and thrive and eventually leave. I feel like I've found my calling. I also met a guy in my class when I went back to school. We were just friends for 2 years, because I didn't feel ready to date, and then in 2019 we started dating. That guy is now my husband. We got married in 2022. My current husband is the most amazing man and partner I could have ever asked for. I can fully lean on him, and him on me. And I don't have to ask him to please pick his socks up off of the floor. He even does most of the cooking because I hate cooking. Due to my cancer treatment, I went into premature ovarian failure, so we are going to start IVF in the new year with eggs I had frozen before my chemo began. We also want to adopt and/or foster at some point and have been looking into that as well. I know for sure my husband is going to be a wonderful support for me and an amazing father. At the time of my divorce, I had no confidence my ex would be either of those things. I don't want to just bash my ex though. He is doing much better since we got divorced. A month after I left for good, he attempted suicide and was put on a 72-hour hold at the hospital. He took their advice to follow up with a psychiatrist seriously, and was diagnosed with ADHD. It explains so much about how he was when we were together. A little later on, he was also diagnosed with autism. I don't speak to my ex because it's too painful for both of us, but my mom is still close to his mom and has given me some updates. He's taking medication that's really helped his ADHD and was able to go to trade school. He has a much better job now and has been in a steady relationship. I wish him all of the best. I look back on my old posts and all I can do is shake my head. I was putting up with so much I would never put up with now. I also thought I was so grown up because I was 24 and married, but clearly I still had maturing to do. Part of me feels sad for my ex too, because he was struggling for so long and I was writing him off as unhelpful. However, even though he had a medical reason for being inconsiderate, I still had to do what's best for me, and I was at my breaking point. Considering his success, I think we're better off without each other. Oh, and I still talk to my ex's friend, the cobra breeder, from time to time. Bucatini the Burmese python is still doing great in his new home. TLDR, I decided to finally leave after my ex was no help when I got pregnant with cancer. We're both doing great after the divorce, and splitting up was the best thing for both of us. My wife cheated with my cousin and had a baby. My family kept it secret for years, and now they want back into my life as I've found success. Please be patient with me as I explain this entire matter to my family because there is a lot of background involved. I'm a 44-year-old man who has been married for 10 years. My 41-year-old wife and I have been together for 13 years. We are content with our lives and have an 8-year-old kid as well. I have been married before though. I married at the age of 22, but regrettably, for reasons I'm still unclear, our marriage ended in divorce 3 years later. Since middle school, my ex-wife, who I'll call Amy, has been with me. We were essentially childhood lovers. We made the decision to be married as soon as we were out of college and had respectable careers. For the first few years, everything was good between us, but then, for some reason, things started to go strange. After that, I felt as though she was not interested at all, despite my best efforts to maintain the spark. A few weeks before our 3rd wedding anniversary, she handed me divorce papers and declared she was done, despite my best efforts to win her back. My goal was to improve our marriage. She was only able to tell me that she was no longer in love with me, which was all I wanted as an explanation for why we had to break up after all this time together. I was furious, but there was nothing I could do about it. Since I had no other choice and didn't want to prolong the divorce and make her even more unhappy by making her live with me, I made the decision to proceed. Because of the limited number of shared assets we had, the process was really simple. I never saw her again after that. After the divorce was finalized, she changed towns and shut off all communication, according to a few people I spoke with. Even my relatives stopped talking to me around the time of the divorce, which was incredibly odd, but this is usual. When I was going through a really trying time, They ought to have been there for me, but instead they began to distance themselves from me. I made a concerted effort to stay in contact with them once the divorce was finalized, but I discovered that I had been blocked everywhere. I even made a few attempts to go see them, but neither my sister nor my parents ever let me in. It all struck me hard because it was so weird and I was already going through a difficult period. I couldn't even bring myself to do anything for a few years following the divorce, so I quit my work and spent a few months at home without a job. But I'm really fortunate to have friends by my side who encouraged me to attempt to move on and do better even during such trying moments. After the divorce, my friends looked after me because my family was never there for me. I ultimately made the decision to open my own eatery. Although it had always been my ambition, I had put it off in order to accumulate sufficient funds because I also needed to consider Amy during our marriage. But because we were divorced, I made the decision to go ahead and do it alone. I also chose to call the restaurant the name my parents had recommended. My buddies helped me approach a few potential investors, secure their support, and begin developing a business plan. I opened my own restaurant a few years later. After the divorce, it took me about 4 years to get back on my feet. I met my current wife 2 years later. We started conversing after she told me she loved my restaurant at a function where we met through friends. I asked her to marry me after 3 years of dating because I wanted to give love another try. Here we are with our son 10 years later. My business life has also improved over the past few years, in addition to my personal life. In my career, I've done fairly well. It all began with a restaurant, but because of its success, we gradually started to grow. I am the CEO of my own hospitality firm at the moment, and we operate a chain of hotels and restaurants that are quite well liked. We intend to grow it even further in the hopes of gaining recognition outside of the state. I have put a lot of effort into getting to where I am now, but it has been a difficult journey. Since of this, I recently agreed to an interview since I felt it was an indication that I had truly made it. However, after seeing that interview on the television, my family decided to get in touch with me again, and I honestly had no clue that it would generate such a storm in my life. I didn't really think my family would have watched it because the channel that carried it was a somewhat popular one. Even if they had, I didn't think they would arrive at my workplace. My workplace's location isn't particularly discreet, so they must have had little trouble finding me. Still, it was highly improper of them to arrive at my place of employment and insist on seeing me while I was there. Regretfully, they did precisely that 3 days ago. Seeing them after all this time was really odd. The receptionist told me that my family was waiting outside when they arrived, even though I was working. I initially assumed she was referring to my wife and kid, which would have been strange given that my son was at school and my wife was at work. She went on to say that my sister and parents were present to see me. I was having trouble processing what was happening at the time. I informed the receptionist that they would have to be ordered to go for the time being, but I would see them later. Naturally, they persisted and were making a scene, so I had to step in. Before I could talk to them and find out what was going on, I didn't want security to eject them from the premises. I therefore walked to the lobby to see them. They immediately pretended that nothing had changed in the over 2 decades since I had last seen them. They started praising me right away, telling me how wonderful it was that I had achieved enough accomplishment to make the headlines and how motivational my tale was. They should have been included in that story as members of my family, so hearing them say it felt odd. They began discussing how they had seen my family, but I tried to dismiss it by telling them I had to return to work. I had mentioned in my interview how helpful my wife and son had been to me along the way. They were referring to certain family images that were also featured on the channel. Since they had been away from us for a while, they began to express a wish to meet my wife and their grandson as soon as possible. At that point, they said I should have done more to reach out to them after the divorce and chastised me for not trying hard enough. It dawned on me that I might at last be able to find out what had transpired at that time. Therefore, rather than telling them to leave, I chose to let them speak. In an attempt to find some closure, I even sat down with them in the lobby. During their conversation, I learned the true reason my family had deserted me and why Amy had chosen to divorce me. Yes, Amy had been cheating on me, as you may have surmised by now. My parents had been helping her hide it the entire time, so I had never suspected it. However, they stated that they had their reasons, or at least, those they believed to be legitimate, so don't pass judgment too hastily. Amy had apparently been having an affair with my cousin, who was the son of my dad's older brother. Everything made sense when they eventually told me. I now saw why they had supported her, why I hadn't received an invitation to any family gatherings for the previous 20 years, and why I had been rejected without any fault of my own. I had never liked my cousin, let's call him Carl, since he was a rude, entitled brat. Unfortunately, His father and the rest of the family felt he should be given a free pass for everything because his mother had died when he was only 6 months old. No one ever told him how to act throughout his life, and he consistently got away with anything. The fact that my uncle, Carl's father, was my dad's supervisor and had founded the family business before my dad joined it didn't help either. When Carl decided he wanted to be with Amy after we were married and she agreed, my family felt compelled to support them. They couldn't take the chance of upsetting my uncle. But apparently it was easy for them to decide to risk their friendship with me. They did precisely that. They also informed me that my uncle made it very apparent during the divorce that he did not want any family members, including my parents and sister, to communicate with me in any way. After Amy said she was expecting my child, they apparently attempted to object. They would have to cut me off if they ever wished to communicate with their grandson. In addition, when Amy filed for divorce, I was never informed that she was expecting a child. I couldn't have predicted because she hadn't been displaying at the time either. She had moved out long before the divorce was finalized, so she hadn't been living with me. Therefore, even before my son was born, I was unaware that I had become a father. It seems that my daughter, who is now almost 20, believes Carl is her biological father even though she has never met me. In any case, my parents told me this about what actually occurred all those years ago. It felt like I was being told a story, and I was hardly able to process any of it at the time. To acknowledge that this was my reality, I had to pinch myself. My family thought that by achieving job security and establishing a bond with their granddaughter, they had effectively cut me off. They had cut me off because, in my opinion, they were simply cowards. They could have simply told me the truth and let me deal with it, but instead they decided to be scared of my dad's brother, acting as though he could do more than just drive my father out of the family business. My dad could have taken legal action in retaliation even at that point. I honestly can't think of a reason why you didn't notify me about Amy's pregnancy or the fact that I have a daughter. They sat on this for 20 years without saying anything until they realized I was doing well in life. They suddenly felt a great deal of pity for everything and wanted to make amends with me. Sadly for them, I was able to see through their deception. I told them I needed them to go as soon as they were done telling me everything because I didn't have the capacity to forgive them right now after what they had just told me. Since we were seated in my workplace's lobby and I didn't want to start a fight, I made an effort to be polite. I couldn't, however, rely on others to act similarly. As soon as I told them to go, they began complaining that I should consider their point of view and how challenging the situation had been for them as well. I informed them that I was positive they were only contacting me now because they wanted a share of my success. They strongly rejected it. My sister even went so far as to argue that they were the reason I was successful in the first place, as they had come up with the name for my restaurant back when it was still just a dream. Given that they hadn't helped me over the years and that I had created everything on my own with the assistance of my friends rather than them, I thought it was rather brave of her to make such a claim. It wasn't enough for them to claim credit for my accomplishment just because they suggested a name. I laughed at her because the idea was so ridiculous. I threatened to have her and my parents ejected from the building if they didn't leave right away. They persisted in their argument, stating that they would not go until we had resolved our differences. But I was not interested in carrying on the discussion. I therefore carried out my promise and had security eject them from the building. As they were being led away, they were obviously very unhappy and tried attempting to convince me that they had no other option. However, I don't believe that. They had an option, but they chose poorly, and now they will have to live with the repercussions. They have survived the previous 20 years without seeing me or my family, so I have no doubt that they will be able to do the same in the future. In any case, they haven't stopped attempting to get in touch with me 3 days after this happened. They haven't had the guts to return inside my workplace, but they have been showing up outside, sending emails to my work address, and texting me on social media. Their attitude has clearly changed as seen by the numerous apologies in their mails. They appear somewhat agitated as they wait for me to stop for them outside my place of employment. However, I ignore them and simply drive past. I almost feel sorry for them now because of how horrible things have gone. To be honest, I've discussed this with my wife because, no matter what I do about my family, we still need to consider my daughter, whom I was unaware of until a few days ago. We have been debating whether or not to track down my daughter and attempt to get in touch with her. We also have to deal with my family, who I don't think will leave until they have another opportunity to talk to me. My wife believes that perhaps I should invite them over and have a conversation with them in order to at least try to resolve the issue. Since this circumstance isn't healthy for my emotional health, she thinks it might help get rid of all the toxicity. But I'm not personally interested in doing it. Given everything I've learned and what I'm going through right now, I don't have the mental capacity to deal with them, so I just want to keep ignoring them till they go away. We are struggling greatly to decide how to proceed and handle this. After 20 years of no communication, I also question whether I'm wrong for not wanting to give my parents another chance to talk. Update 1. A week and 3 days have passed since my initial post, and my spouse and I have made the decision to keep ignoring my relatives. Fortunately, they haven't been showing up to my place of employment for the previous several days. This is most likely due to their fatigue or fear of security. In any case, I'm glad. It was much simpler for me to quit thinking about them after they stopped visiting. It appears that I was feeling guilty about how I was handling the matter because of their presence. I no longer feel bad about not responding to their texts. No matter how many times they apologize, nothing will change. No amount of apologies will make up for the fact that they have failed me as a family. I'm not even bothering to block them anymore, even though they've kept sending messages from different accounts and email addresses. What's the point? I'll continue to ignore them even if they try to apologize by making new accounts. We'll see how long they can continue this. Let's go on to the other problem we are facing, my daughter. Neither my wife nor I knew how to handle the matter. My parents told me where she attends college throughout our talk, so we have her name. I haven't taken any action yet, but my assistant was able to locate her social media profiles. I am unsure of if it is appropriate for me to contact her, and I'm unsure of how to inform her that I am her biological father. I can't just walk up to Amy's house and demand custody or anything because she's not a kid. Furthermore, given what I've learned about Amy, I'd prefer not to have her involved in this at all. I no longer have any regard for that woman or my family as a whole because they are all cowards with no courage, and I don't want anything to do with them. I can't say the same for my kid though. She is still my biological daughter, regardless of who reared her. Please let me know if you have any suggestions about how to approach her or if I should even be doing this. I also want to thank everyone who left a remark on my first post. I hope you can help me again because your advice has been incredibly useful. Update 2. My wife and I made the decision to move ahead after reading the comments on my last update. Waiting for the ideal moment or chance to get in touch with my daughter was pointless. We had to remove the band-aid and finish the job. We thought it wouldn't be appropriate to fly out to her because she lives in a different state, so we chose to message her first and see how things work out. We messaged her on Instagram and gave her the most polite explanation possible. We are merely awaiting a response at this time. She will undoubtedly find it difficult to accept, just as it is for me. The fact that my wife has been so understanding of my efforts to reconnect with my long-lost kid from my previous marriage is beyond me. We're trying our best, but I'm sure it's bringing up a lot of complex feelings for all of us. I would love to establish a relationship with my daughter, therefore I sincerely hope she responds. My parents haven't visited my place of employment in a long time. They wrote me a lengthy email yesterday in which they expressed their sincere regret for everything and their want to mend our friendship. They only required one opportunity. Additionally, they indicated they would wait for me to get in touch with them before contacting me again. To be honest, I'm a little relieved that they finally understood that I don't want to talk to them at this time. The last thing I need is for them to add additional drama to my already full plate. All I can hope for now is that they follow through on their promise and don't get in touch with me again. I will talk to them myself if I feel ready or want to at any time. But at this point, it doesn't appear probable that this will occur anytime soon. The situation has only gotten worse now that I know the true reason they haven't spoken to me in 20 years. I don't think the feeling of betrayal and hurt will go away anytime soon. There was at least one positive outcome from this. I learned more about my daughter, and I'm hoping she will choose to give our relationship another shot. In case she doesn't want to speak with us, I haven't yet told my kid about her. I don't want to give him unrealistic expectations. But if everything works out, he might see her as a sister, and I might meet the daughter I never knew I had. Right now, I'm feeling a lot of different emotions, and I'm making a lot of effort to control them. Update 3. I made contact with my daughter on social media approximately 2 weeks ago. I messaged her, telling her everything about myself and our relationship. I finally got a response today after waiting for 2 weeks. She only mentioned that she had discussed me with her mother and that she had discovered that I am her biological father. She was shocked by this, of course. She had no notion that she wasn't Carl's daughter and had thought he was her biological father for the last 20 years. She also told me that she wanted to see me and my family after learning the real tale of how her mother and I got to be this way. Since she doesn't have the money to visit us at this time and isn't talking to her family, we are taking a plane to see her this weekend. She didn't go into too much detail, but Amy first attempted to deny the message when she challenged her about it. But in the end, she had to be honest with her. Since I don't want to talk to Amy, I sincerely hope she doesn't get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her yet. When my family learned that I had contacted my daughter, They promptly betrayed their word and began attempting to speak with me. My uncle was obviously upset that I found out, and rightfully so, as they had worked for 20 years to make sure I never found out so that their lives wouldn't be disturbed. I've learned that my uncle is blaming my parents. My dad still fears his older brother, despite the fact that he no longer works for him and owns his own company. He has been pleading with me to explain that neither Carl nor my uncle were involved in my discovery, but I fail to understand the purpose. They are the only ones who could have maintained such a secret, so even if I did, I doubt anyone would believe me. The majority of my family has never been close to me, and they haven't bothered to talk to me in 20 years. It's amusing how frantic they are right now to keep their friendship with my uncle intact. But to be honest, I don't give a damn. I lost out on 20 years of a relationship with my daughter because of them. This, I believe, is the least I can do. Update 4. I finally got to meet my kid today with my family. It was initially uncomfortable, then moved, but overall it was simply lovely. Despite having grown up with two of the worst people I've ever met, she seems to be a decent and caring person. She is a very mature and clever young woman, whether it is due to her natural disposition or to the fact that they raised her well. During our lengthy talk, we discussed Amy and Carl's situation. She told me that she didn't care that they didn't approve of her meeting us. She doesn't care what her folks think now that she knows the truth. She doesn't intend to eliminate Amy and Carl from her life entirely because they don't have any other children but her, but she will undoubtedly put them out of her life for a while as she tries to come to terms with everything. She informed me that she also needed time to begin developing a relationship with me. I completely understand that she's in a really strange mental state at the moment. She seemed to get along well with my wife and her half-brother, and we had a great day overall. During supper, we discovered that my parents, who are her grandparents, had maintained communication with her throughout the entire time. Given that they were her grandfather's brother's family rather than her biological grandparents, she always thought it was odd how sentimental they were about her. Now they understand why they were so devoted to her. But now that she has learned all of this, she and I both view them differently. Since I'm a lot older than her, I can probably relate to her feelings, but not totally. Having been deceived by those she thought were closest to her throughout her life, she is just 20 years old and is likely finding it much more difficult to cope. In any case, we will both need to work on this, and maybe things will improve in the future. We're going to make an effort to make it the greatest it can be, so I know it must be. The fact that the meeting went well and that my family and I both seem satisfied after everything makes me very happy. No matter what Carl, Amy, or my family have done, I'm also rather happy with the situation. The important thing is that we finally have an opportunity to put things right after all these years, and I'm going to take advantage of it. My friends didn't invite me to their wedding, then made me the bad guy when I couldn't attend at the last minute. Original post, sorry for the long story, I added a TL.dr. I'm definitely looking for advice, but it comes with a backstory. A friend, Greg 28, in my circle of friends met Shannon 28, about 5 years ago, and they immediately hit it off. Everybody instantly fell in love with Shannon because she's friendly and really fun to hang out with. They were everybody's favorite couple and really made our hangouts much more fun. We all knew they were perfect for each other. They both made our crew that much better. The engagement was expected but much welcome news. Our friend's circle was buzzing about the inevitable wedding. Then the invitations went out. You know those save the date magnets that people send out? Well, it really sucked seeing them on everybody else's fridge when I visited friends knowing I didn't get one and wasn't invited. Feeling left out really sucks. But it gets worse. I completely understand how stressful wedding planning is, and I believe nobody should feel that they have to invite people they don't want to their wedding. It's their day and their ceremony, and they shouldn't have to have people there who they don't want there. I didn't cause a fuss or express to anyone that I was hurt, that I felt excluded from the wedding and by extension, excluded from the group. I didn't want to be looked on in an even worse way that I feel I was apparently being looked at. But one friend actually stood up for me. When their wedding came up in conversation and people talked about booking flights and rooms, destination wedding in New York City. Eventually I was asked if I had booked yet. I said, me and my girlfriend, weren't invited. Nobody could believe it, but I insisted that I wasn't upset because I know how situations like this can go. I didn't want to cause trouble because then the happy couple might resent me. Then I'd be the bad guy. I heard through other friends that my friend Tracy thought it was really messed up that I wasn't invited. She and I never spoke of how I wasn't invited to the wedding, but she really felt a certain way about it. So a month before the destination wedding, I got a text from Greg basically saying sorry for forgetting to send an invite, but that they would love to have us come to the wedding. It was way too late at that point for me. I couldn't get away from my job, and I didn't have a chance to put money aside for a year for an expensive NYC destination wedding like everyone else did. I didn't even get a save the date. Every flight and hotel, no rooms where everyone else was staying, obviously. Too late for that, was unaffordable for me. I texted him back that I couldn't make it. The wedding came and went and I felt bad about everything. I saw the Facebook pictures of my friends all having the time of their lives. It looked like a great wedding. There's even a picture of just the group of friends labeled the crew. I don't think I've ever felt so left out, honestly. It really made me feel worthless and unwanted. So naturally the typical thought surfaced. They don't like you. They think you're annoying. They think you're an asshole. If you can't identify the schmuck in a group of friends, that means you're it. They think you try way too hard to be nice and think you're a phony. Then, as if it couldn't get any worse, Shannon messaged me on Facebook asking why I didn't RSVP and said they missed me at the wedding. RSVP. RSVP. Doesn't one have to be invited in order to RSVP? Everybody got a year to prepare between getting save the dates and actual wedding invitations. I got a text message a month before the wedding. Just as I feared, I'm being made out to be the bad guy, and I even made a point to keep my feelings to myself and play it cool. But as usual, I didn't say this to her because I know how I would end up looking. I actually apologized for, I don't even know. But I made a point to mention how I spoke with Greg about it. I also made sure to compliment the wedding pictures and say it looked like fun. I did everything I could in that conversation to make it easier on her, and of course now I feel like a total schmuck. That was this past summer and I haven't seen them since. I feel like that's it for me in the group now. I see some of the friends in our group every now and then, but everything feels different now. None of them even responded to my birthday party Facebook invite this month. I feel like things are being said behind the scenes and I feel completely out of the loop. It felt like a passive-aggressive message that maybe Greg and Shannon never actually liked me. My fiancé gets along great with Shannon and she's just confused. Seeing her confusion just makes my heart break even more because she's a sweetheart who's never offended anybody in her life. I wish I could break it to her that I'm just the guy in the group that Greg and Shannon think sucks, but I don't know how, and I feel like a complete loser who deserves this. I'll always appreciate Tracy for sticking up for me. She may never know how awesome it feels hearing about how she told everybody it was messed up that I was left out. I haven't even spoken to her about how the whole thing made me feel, or anybody for that matter. Reddit, you are the first to hear about it, because I didn't want it to appear like I'm making a stink and become even more disliked. This whole thing just fucking sucks. I feel like I don't have friends anymore. And to make it worse, soon I'll have a wedding of my own and I'm afraid I won't have any friends there, except for Tracy, of course. How am I supposed to handle who I invite so it doesn't seem like I'm leaving people out for petty revenge? How the hell do I navigate a toxic situation that I had no hand in creating? I still feel like I'm in the dark or could be overreacting. What the hell? TL.er, friends forgot or chose not to invite me to their wedding. After a friend stuck up for me, I was invited via text message, with little notice, had to decline, then asked why I didn't RSVP and that I was missed. Soon I'll have my own wedding to plan and don't feel like I have any friends to invite, don't know if I should invite certain people, don't know how to even approach the situation I didn't create. Relevant comments, deleted. Dude, you clearly tell them you are not respected like the others. Cut them out, this is about self-respect. Find new friends, don't turn back. OOP, thanks for reading and responding. Yeah, I've been thinking, I guess I can have my younger brother be the best man and just not have groomsmen, considering the circumstances. It's just fucked how I did everything I could to avoid looking like the bad guy, yet here we are. I'm the bad guy regardless of anything I did. Doc. Just that totally sucks. I would be hurt too. Do you think maybe Greg was in charge of sending invites to his friends and forgot? Or it got lost in the mail? I had an invite returned to me 1 month after I sent it, but thankfully I'd sent a save the date and sent my invite super early, so it ended up being fine, but if I hadn't, one of my cousins might have incorrectly thought she was excluded. It sounds like Shannon, at least, thought you were sent an invite if she was upset you didn't RSVP. You actually did RSVP by texting Greg back, but it sounds like she thought you'd been sent an RSVP response card. OOP. Yeah, it could just be a simple misunderstanding, but word seemed to get around early that I didn't get a save the date and even later didn't get an invite either. Tracy especially seemed to make sure everybody was aware that she wasn't happy about my exclusion. The other friends I spoke to didn't even suggest that it could have been a mistake, almost like they knew something I didn't but didn't feel comfortable saying it. Only one person even spoke up on my behalf. Update. I half took everyone's advice and brought it up with Tracy. She just confirmed that Shannon was full of shit when she asked me why she didn't get my RSVP and wanted to absolve herself of guilt. I'm not sure if they forgot or if I just wasn't invited yet, but Tracy said we'd talk about it more tonight when she gets out of work. Final update. I spoke about it in depth with Tracy. It turns out Greg's best man, someone who was never in the gang but grew up with Greg, always hated me and Greg thinks I'm annoying. Shannon later felt bad they chose not to invite me and pressured him to invite me over text knowing I wouldn't be able to make it. Also, it wasn't only Tracy who thought it was wrong that I didn't get an invite, and the chatter is what made Shannon ask me why I didn't RSVP, to make it seem like my invite was lost in the mail. It feels better knowing this because, like I said, they don't have to have people they don't want at their wedding. But knowing Greg doesn't like me fucking hurts because I always thought we were friends. Turns out he's the phony. Unfortunately, everybody else, except for Tracy and a few others, liked Greg more than me, so they kinda felt like they had to choose a side after Tracy, and a few others, it turns out, brought up why I didn't get invited. Lots of people are feeling guilty about this, apparently. They still felt like they had to choose a side for whatever reason. Probably because most of them went to high school with Greg. Oh well, that's life. Thanks for the advice about being more assertive. Those of you who were polite about it were very helpful. Thanks. Relevant comments, deleted. Yeah, you don't need those two-faced assholes in your life. Congratulations on finding out before they borrowed money from you. When they get divorced, you can reach out to Greg and tell him that he deserves it. OP, it's funny you bring up borrowing money because they're the type who always want to split the check when they order the most expensive shit and always say, "I'll get you back." And I don't trust Venmo. I'll just give you cash when I go to the ATM, and don't. On the plus side, I don't have to pay for part of their steak and lobster dinners anymore. Will OOP invite Greg, Shannon and the best man to his wedding? I don't think it would be right to force anybody to choose sides, because that feels inappropriate to do to friends. I think everybody who stood up for me gets an invite. Greg can have his best man and be the cynical bastards they are together. Honestly, nobody really likes the best man all that much because he's always acted like an obnoxious asshole when he's been around us. They can have each other when told to talk to Greg directly and get it from the source, actually got confirmation, and an apology, from someone else. Not everybody was cool with it, but she's the only one who really has a spine and spoke up for me. Turns out they fucked up and caused all kinds of drama between people in the group. Some people wanted to keep me out of the loop so I wouldn't feel insulted. I kinda get it, but it just makes me appreciate Tracy more. Final comments from OOP Ryra Jin. In this situation you aren't the bad guy from my perspective, and to be honest, a destination wedding is a dick move on your friend's part. The sheer inconvenience of one is like dick move supreme. Especially the fact they chose NYC, WTF. Plus some people turn into assholes after marriage, and statistically speaking, your married male friend is going to be spending more time with his wife now than his friends. In some ways marriage is like high school. You go to it with your friends for a little while, then you start to drift away from another by barely communicating. OOP Shannon is from up there and she wanted to be closer to her family. Yeah, it turns out they didn't want me there and felt pressured once some of my friends realized. I guess it was easier to make the decision when it was just the two of them and they lost confidence in the choice when people found out. Ryra Jin, I feel it's best to let the consequences of this affect them, and just move on. OOP. Yeah. Hopefully they learn from this and aren't such assholes in the future. I don't see Greg ever changing from the cynical and negative guy he is, but you never know. My husband asked me to flash road workers. I did and he became furious and pushed me out of the car. Was he being a jerk? Original post. Been together 10 years, married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years he's started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn, so I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual, so if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated I'll try it. He just says duly noted, and carries on with his day, which is frustrating. A few nights ago we had friends round for tea and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says we've found a way to make it more entertaining though, haven't we? To her husband, and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with the groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups, and they are normally going 10 to 15 miles per hour, so when they get near one of the groups he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook. And he said yes, and we even had sex that night for the first time in months, and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning we were both at work and as soon as he woke up he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure and it wasn't just horny talk, and what if the men don't want to be flashed. He said he's sure and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a group of workmen and my husband gets all giddy and says, "Are you ready?" I say yes and he says, "Now." And beeps his horn and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles per hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting, "Get out, you fucking slag." I start crying and he's leaning over me opening my car door and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The cars behind are beeping as he's stopped traffic and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them and I do. He pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out of the car and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out of the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in it. They took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heater on and made me a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and then seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they are used to it but I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were also sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone but I don't know anyone's number apart from work and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could just ring a taxi but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man I'm assuming was their team leader told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go so I asked if I could go to my mom's house about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van and 2 of them drove me to my mom's and they were really sweet and made sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mom answered I was hysterical and crying and they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mom offered them a drink and I tried to give them their coat and boots back but they said it's okay. I told my mom we were driving to McDonald's and got into an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mom's. My husband had been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he doesn't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout, "Nice pair," and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave, he is obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50ths but if I do stay I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy either for him or both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away over a few seconds of madness and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jackets and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. TLDR. Husband wanted me to flash, I did, he then physically pushed me out of the car but says he's sorry. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I don't think any relationship advice will do anything to help your situation. Nor will couples counseling. This is definitely the sort of situation where couples counseling will only escalate problematic abusive behavior. What you need quite frankly, is a divorce lawyer. OOP, that's the thought that's becoming more prevalent in my mind. I took pics of the bruises and scuffs on my arms and legs afterwards and I kept looking at them and thinking what would I say to anyone else who showed me them. Commenter 2, you sound codependent on him and do everything he tells you to do to please him, because you are terrified that he will leave you. Now you are in a situation where you did what he told you to do, but he ditched you anyway. He left you on the side of the road to the mercy of strangers that you just flashed with nothing on you. That was very dangerous and it makes me question if he wanted something to happen to you. This relationship isn't safe for you anymore and that probably will be for some time. He's abusive. He doesn't want to do couples counseling, because he knows what they would tell you. It isn't wise to do that with him anyway, because all that therapy is going to teach him are more weak points for you to take advantage of. Look for therapy for yourself. You know that he doesn't love you, that's why you accept all these behaviors of him. You can't make him love you by accepting his disrespect. You need to leave. It won't get better, it will get worse. Update. I took people's advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail but told him he couldn't stay at my house so he's gone to his mom's. After the argument he told all our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened. Plus pictures of my injuries including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he's sent admitting he asked me to flash, and admitting he hit me, although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they are supposed to sound. I've spoken a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment. TLDR, I informed the police about the assault and he had to leave my house. Relevant comments. OOP on the workers who rescued her. OOP. Luckily the road worker was a big strong guy. He picked me up and got me out of the way like I was as light as a feather. That's the bit that plays on my mind the most. He drove off a split second after I was out of the car and the door was still open. I think in his mind I was still half in the car when he drove off. Can OP go to a safe place and away from her husband? OP, I don't think I need protection. My brother is staying with me now and he could beat up 10 of my husbands with one hand. Plus I feel like there's more deserving people than me who need a charity's help. OOP telling the police what happened and how they have responded. OP, I did tell the police exactly what happened, as did the workmen. Believe it or not, the police didn't care about me showing flesh and cared more about me getting beaten up and nearly ran over. My family kicked me out because my sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring. 3 years later, they discovered it in the garbage disposal. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here goes. I'm Elliot, 26 years old, and 3 years ago my life was flipped upside down by a false charge made by my older sister, Gemma, 29. I grew up in a little Ohio town with my parents, John, 55M, and Lisa, 53F, and my sister, Gemma. We lived in a modest 2-story house that my parents purchased when they first married. It was not fancy, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we got all we needed. Growing up, Gemma and I were quite close. We'd spend hours playing in our backyard, climbing the ancient oak tree and inventing complicated games. She was always the leader, making up the rules and plots, while I was content to follow along. As we grew older, however, things began to alter. Gemma was always an overachiever. She was the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and appeared to thrive in whatever she tried. In contrast, I was more laid back. I performed okay in school, but I was never as motivated as Gemma. As we approached our adolescence, this disparity began to erode our relationship. By the time Gemma left for college, we had grown apart. She attended a prominent university on a scholarship, whilst I stayed local and attended community college. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I took a range of classes to figure it out. Gemma relocated to the city after graduating from college and began working at a large marketing agency. She'd return home for holidays and occasional weekends, full of stories about her fascinating life and excellent profession. I couldn't help feeling inferior in contrast. I was still living at home, working part-time at the local grocery shop, and trying to figure out my next step. Despite our differences, I always assumed Gemma and I were fine. We weren't as close as we had were, but I assumed it was just part of growing up. I had no idea how quickly everything might fall apart. Gemma and her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, were engaged 3 years ago. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was ecstatic. Tom was a lawyer from a wealthy family, and my parents idolized him. He proposed with a stunning diamond ring that has been in his family for generations. Gemma was overjoyed and couldn't stop showing it off to everyone. The engagement celebration was a large occasion. My parents brought what seemed like the entire town to our house to celebrate. I recall feeling a little out of place among the rich people Gemma and Tom had invited from the city. I remained close to my old high school pals who were still in town, feeling more at ease with them than with Gemma's sophisticated set. A month after the engagement, all hell broke out. It was Tuesday afternoon and I had the day off work. I was in my room, playing video games and enjoying the quiet house. Gemma was visiting for a week, taking some time off work to begin arranging the wedding with our mother. I heard Gemma return home from a shopping trip with Mom. They were talking and laughing downstairs. I didn't think much about it and returned to my game. Around an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to check what was going on, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She explained that she took it off while doing dishes and left it on the kitchen counter. When she returned to grab it, It was gone. I was stunned and quickly denied taking it, but Gemma refused to listen. She kept shrieking that I was the only other one in the home, so it must have been me. She mentioned how I was always jealous of her success and how I probably wanted to sell the ring so I could finally move out and accomplish something with my life. Our parents arrived home in the midst of the chaos, and Gemma recounted her version of events. To my horror, they believed her wholeheartedly. My mother began to cry, questioning how I could have done such a thing to my own sister. My father merely looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. They began searching my room and turned everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but they did discover some money I had saved from my job at the supermarket. It wasn't much, maybe a few hundred, but Gemma quickly picked up on it, claiming I must have sold the ring and that's where the money came from. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was considering taking some classes at the local community college, but no one listened. The following few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma repeatedly pressed me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to contact the police if I did not come clean. I was afraid and felt entirely alone. Nobody in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I tried contacting several of my pals, but the majority of them had moved away after high school. The few who remained in town appeared unwilling to become engaged in family strife. I felt more alone than ever. After a week of relentless accusations and threats, my parents made a decision that would alter my life forever. They told me I needed to go. They said they couldn't trust me longer and that I was putting shame on the family. They gave me 2 days to pack my belongings and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best buddy from high school, Ryan, 26M, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered to let me rest on his couch for a time. But I knew I couldn't stay there long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed everything I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, including clothes, books, my laptop, and a few memories from brighter times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma eyeing me from her old bedroom window. I thought I caught a glint of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned aside. Walking out of that house, the only one I'd ever known, was the most difficult thing I had ever done. I felt deceived and abandoned by those who were supposed to love me completely. The saddest part was that I had done nothing wrong. For the next 2 months, I alternated between Ryan's couch and cheap motels as I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find to make ends meet. I've worked as a dishwasher, dog walker, and even spent a few weeks on a construction job. It was a challenge, but I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I got a solid job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The job was hard, the hours were long, but the pay was consistent. The salary wasn't spectacular, but it allowed me to rent a modest room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. I gradually began rebuilding my life, but the grief of what had happened never went away. I'd lie awake at night, repeating the events in my memory and wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have turned against me so quickly? How could Gemma, who had grown up with me and knew me better than anyone else, believe I would do such a thing? I cut all communication with my family. They attempted to contact me several times in the beginning. My mother would leave heartfelt voicemails urging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few terse text messages indicating we needed to discuss. Gemma did show up at the warehouse once, but I declined to see her. I couldn't bear to speak with them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For 3 years this was how I lived. I made new friends at work and in my shared home. We'd hang out after shifts, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was mine, and I had created it from scratch. I worked hard and was even promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started attending online classes to learn business management. I was slowly deciding what I wanted to accomplish with my life, but there was always a part of me that was outraged and wounded by what had occurred. I missed my previous life and family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was challenging. When I saw families shopping together or heard Christmas music, I felt a sense of sadness for what I had lost. Then last week, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply stated, "We need to talk." The message was brief, stating that they needed to meet with me immediately and that it was regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to dismiss it, as I did with all of their previous attempts to reach me. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe a small part of me still wanted a conclusion. After arguing with myself for hours, I decided to listen to them. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing the dishes. She only recognized this a few days ago, when the disposal began making unusual noises and they summoned a plumber to inspect it. My father claimed Gemma was upset when she understood what had transpired and that I had been telling the truth all along. He stated they all felt bad about what they had done to me and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, experiencing a swirl of emotions. On the one hand, I felt vindicated. I had always told the truth and now everyone knew it. However, I was angry. I was outraged that it took 3 years to find out the truth, that I had missed so much time with my family, and that I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to return home. They claim they want to make things right. Gemma has been phoning and messaging nonstop, asking for forgiveness. But I'm not certain I can forgive them. They pushed me out without hesitation. Chose to think the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to send them all to hell and let them deal with the shame of what they did to me. But another part of me misses my previous life and wonders whether there is a way to rebuild what we've lost. I do not know what to do. Should I give them an opportunity to make amends, or should I continue living the life I've created for myself without them? I'm torn and could appreciate some outside insight on this whole situation. Update 1. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I'd want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It truly helped me go through my emotions and figure out what to do. After much debate, I chose to meet with my family. I believed I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't convinced about reconciliation. We decided to meet in a neutral site, a modest coffee shop in the next town over. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown that we wouldn't run across anyone we knew, yet close enough that anyone could get there without too much effort. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner where we could enjoy some solitude. When they walked in, it was like a hit in the belly. Seeing them after 3 years was intense. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. She was older than I remembered, with more gray hair and creases around her eyes. My father appeared weary and tired, his shoulders drooping as if he were carrying a huge weight. Gemma couldn't look me in the eye at first. She appeared smaller and less confident than the sister I recalled. We sat down, and for a time, no one knew what to say. They all started talking at once, with apologies falling out. My parents said they had failed as parents by not trusting me and kicking me out. They admitted that they had regretted their decision every day since, but pride and humiliation had prevented them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been a man of few words, talked for hours about how he had repeated those days in his head, trying to figure out how he could have been so blind. He claimed he had always prided himself on being fair and reasonable, but that emotion had clouded his judgment when it counted the most. My mother, through tears, told me how she had preserved my room exactly as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She stated she would wake up in the middle of the night, thinking she had heard me coming home, only to realize what had transpired. Gemma burst into tears, stating she would never forgive herself for accusing me and damaging our relationship. She mentioned how she had always looked up to me when we were youngsters, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so preoccupied with her own life and troubles that she had lost sight of what was truly important. As they talked, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma stuck up for me when I was bullied in middle school. I reflected on all the times we had laughed together, exchanged secrets, and supported each other during difficult times. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the fantastic times we'd had. I heard everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The anguish and resentment from the previous 3 years were still too raw. I informed them that I needed time to comprehend things. They appeared to comprehend and did not push for more. My mom wanted to hug me before we went, but I backed away. I wasn't prepared for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt look on her face almost convinced me to change my decision, but I remained firm. I needed to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I returned to my apartment and carefully considered what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my previous life? Can I ever trust them again? Was it worth attempting to repair our relationship? I recognized that, while I missed having a family, I had also developed significantly in the previous 3 years. I had become self-sufficient, robust, and had created a life for myself from scratch. I wasn't the same person they'd kicked out 3 years before. I reflected about my warehouse work, my online education, and the friends I'd made. I had worked hard to reach where I was, and I was pleased with what I had accomplished on my own. The thought of abandoning that and returning to my old life felt awful. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family had triggered a variety of feelings. Despite everything, I still loved and missed them. I wondered if I could have a relationship with them while still keeping my independence. After a few days of deliberation, I reached a decision. I called my parents and explained that while I appreciated their apology, I was not yet ready to fully reconcile. I informed them that I needed more time and space to heal. I also established some boundaries. I indicated I was willing to maintain minimal contact with them, but I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had occurred. I told them that if we were to continue our connection, it had to be on my terms. They expressed disappointment but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and allow me the time I needed. My mother asked if she might phone me once a week to check in, and I agreed, assuming it would be a nice approach to gradually re-establish trust. As for Gemma, I've decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had affected me the most, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. I told her I needed more time before I could consider having another relationship with her. She was upset, but explained that she understood and would wait until I was ready. It's been a rough week, with many emotional highs and lows. I've had moments when I questioned my decision, wondering if I'm being too harsh or if I'm passing up an opportunity to reunite with my family. But then I recall how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I'm doing the right thing by taking things slowly. I've also started researching therapeutic possibilities. Many of you suggested it in the comments, and I believe it would be beneficial to have a professional to speak with while I navigate this tricky situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it could be beneficial to me. For the time being, my primary focus is on my job and studies. I have a huge project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let all of this family drama distract me from my goals. I am also thinking about moving to a better apartment. I've been saving, and I think I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are individuals out there who understand and care, even if we've never met. I'll provide an update if anything substantial changes. Update 2. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I'd like to share some developments. I've been sticking to the boundaries I've established with my family. We've had a few phone calls and text messages, but nothing particularly intense. It's been okay, awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in every now and then, but they don't ask for more than I'm prepared to provide. I can tell they are working hard to rebuild trust, but it is a slow process. My mother calls once a week, as we promised. These calls were strained at first, with extended silences, but they are becoming easier. We usually discuss neutral issues, such as her employment at the hospital, the weather, and my online education. It's not much, but it's a beginning. My father has been sending me short emails, usually simply to check in or share something he thinks I'd be interested in. Last week, he forwarded me an article about a new business launching in our hometown. It was a little gesture, but it reminded me of how he would clip newspaper stories for me. When I was younger, Gemma struggled with the barrier I'd created between us. She sent me many long, emotional texts apologizing and pleading for the opportunity to make things right. I responded simply, stating that I need more time. It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine. The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on. In terms of my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution located approximately an hour distant provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I'm prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me, an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest. After I told her, she showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself, and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family. Not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and bitterness, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about everything that has transpired. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about. But now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We intend to stay in touch once I relocate, with weekly phone calls and visits during the holidays. It's a start. Perhaps, with time and distance, we will be able to create something new. For the time being, my attention is focused on the future. I'm excited about my new work, the new city, and the opportunities that await me. I've started looking for apartments online and researched the region where I'll be residing. It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, but I'm largely looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens to my family, I'm confident I'll be okay. I've shown to myself that I can deal with whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the value of surrounding myself with people that believe in and support me, whether they're related or not. After my wife passed away, my sister-in-law tried to take my children. She called CPS on me, but the judge's decision left her completely shocked. I, 29M, lost my wife, Mia, 31F, in a horrific vehicle accident 6 months ago. We have twin sons, Ethan and Noah, 7M, and their transition to life without their mother has been extremely challenging. Mia and I met in high school. She was a senior and I was a sophomore. It was not love at first sight or anything dramatic like that. We were lab partners in AP biology, and at first we couldn't stand one another. Mia believed I was a slacker because I was often joking around, and I thought she was stressed because she was obsessed with obtaining perfect grades. However, as we worked together during the semester, things changed. I could see Mia was passionate about science, and her eyes lit up when she talked about her ambitions to work in technology. She recognized that, despite my joker demeanor, I was actually quite excellent at biology and cared about succeeding. We began hanging out outside of class, studying together, and those study sessions evolved into date nights. When Mia left for college, everyone assumed we wouldn't last. They believed high school relationships couldn't survive long distance, but we proved them wrong. We talked every day, saw each other as frequently as possible, and when I graduated 2 years later, I chose a college near her so we could finally be together again. We married just after I finished college. There was a little ceremony in Mia's parents' backyard. Mia's sister, Jen, 35F, served as maid of honor, and my best college mate was the best man. Mia's parents, John, 62M, and Linda, 60F, were overjoyed. They had always regarded me as a son and now it was official. We had the boys a year later. It wasn't planned and we were both shocked to learn Mia was pregnant, and much more so when we discovered she was carrying twins. However, the moment Ethan and Noah were born, they became our entire universe. Mia was always the ambitious one. She secured a position as a software engineer at a major technology business right out of college and swiftly rose through the ranks. I had studied education with the intention of becoming a teacher, but when the boys were born, we felt it would be more practical for me to stay at home with them. Mia's pay was more than adequate to sustain us, and childcare for twins would have consumed the majority of my potential teaching compensation anyhow. I like being a stay-at-home dad. I got to see all of the boys' firsts. First steps, first words, and first day of school. Mia would come home every evening, eager to hear about their day, and weekends were always spent with the family. We lived a lovely, happy life. Then 6 months ago, everything shifted. Mia was heading home after a late night at work. It had been pouring, the roads were slick, and a drunk driver had run a red light and damaged her vehicle. She was killed on impact. In a moment, our lovely little world was shattered. The first several weeks following Mia's death were a fog. I was in shock, going through the rituals of preparing the funeral and caring for the boys without fully absorbing what had happened. Jen and Mia's parents were quite helpful throughout that time. They essentially moved in, preparing meals, assisting with the boys, and taking phone calls from well-wishers. However, as the weeks passed into months, I began to feel suffocated. Jen, in particular, appeared reluctant to leave. She'd come over every day, frequently staying until late in the evening. At first, I was appreciative for the assistance. She'd cook meals, help with the boys' homework, and even begin teaching them how to play the piano, which Mia had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Jen's behavior did, however, become more controlling and judgmental over time. She began making comments about my parenting. She'd say things like, "Mia would have done it this way," or "the boys need a woman's touch." It hurt, but I brushed it off, believing she was also grieving. She then proceeded to criticize my job search efforts. With Mia gone, I needed to start earning money to support the boys, but if I mentioned a job application or an interview, Jen would reply, "You should be focusing on the boys, not your career." Or, "Mia wouldn't want you to put the boys in daycare." I tried to explain that I had no choice. Our funds would not last forever, and while Mia had life insurance, I preferred to save that money for the boys' future. But Jen would not listen. She insisted that she and her husband, Mark, 37M, could help out financially if necessary. Jen arrived unannounced with a bundle of documents last week, escalating the situation. She sat me down at the kitchen table, where Mia and I had spent countless evenings discussing our future, and informed me that she thought it would be best if she became the boys' legal guardian. I was stunned. Jen went on to say that she and Mark could create a more stable home situation for the boys, who needed a mother role. She discussed how they had a larger house and a better school district, how Mark's position as a lawyer meant they were financially stable, and how she could remain at home full-time with the boys, just as I had done. I listened in disbelief as Jen explained her idea. She assured me that I could still see the boys whenever I wanted, and that this was not about taking them away from me, but about doing what was best for them. She even proposed that I move in with them, at least temporarily, to aid with the transition. When I finally found my voice, I told her, no, absolutely not. These were my children and Mia's children. We raised kids together and planned their futures together. I was fully capable of raising children on my own. Jen did not take my refusal well. She started ranting, accusing me of being selfish and not thinking about what was best for the boys. She brought up every minor error I'd made in the previous 6 months, such as forgetting to pack Ethan's lunch for a school trip or Noah receiving a low mark because I didn't assist him study for an exam. She had the audacity to suggest that Mia would be disappointed in me. That was the final straw. I lost my temper and ordered Jen to leave. I told her she was no longer welcome in our home unless she respected my status as the boy's father. She departed in tears, and I assumed that was the end of it. Yesterday, I received a call from Child Protective Services. They informed me that someone had expressed concern about my abilities to care for the boys. They didn't say who created the report, but I knew it had to be Jen. I am enraged and afraid. A CPS worker is due to investigate our home next week. I contacted John and Linda to explain what had happened, hoping they could persuade Jen. Instead, they agreed with her. They believe I am being unreasonable and should consider Jen's offer for the benefit of the boys. They even propose that I live with them and allow them help raise the children. I feel like I'm under attack from all sides. These people claim to love my boys, but they are attempting to destroy the only stable thing the twins have left, their bond with me. I'm doing my best to balance everything, and while I've made mistakes, I adore my sons more than anything in the world. Last night, after I put the boys to bed, I sat in Mia's former home office, surrounded by her belongings. Her degrees on the wall, family photos on the desk, and even her favorite coffee mug, which was right where she left it the morning before. I broke down and cried for the first time in months. I miss her so badly. I miss her counsel, her laugh, and the way she could always relax me when I was stressed. I'm not sure how to do this without her, but I need to figure it out for Ethan and Noah. They have already lost their mother. I can't let them lose their father either. I do not know what to do. Should I concede to avoid a messy legal battle? Should I lose relations with Mia's family entirely? How can I safeguard my rights as a father while simultaneously doing what is best for my boys? Update 1. It's been a month since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for everyone's kind remarks and advice. Your remarks helped me gain perspective and find the courage to speak up for myself and my sons. The CPS visit was 2 weeks ago and it went better than expected. Sarah, the social worker, was both compassionate and professional. She arrived early in the morning, right as I was preparing the boys for school. I was nervous, but I tried to appear normal for Ethan and Noah's sake. Sarah observed our morning routine, me making breakfast, well, pouring cereal, but hey, it was a healthy brand. Assisting the boys in packing their backpacks, and double-checking that Ethan had his inhaler. She appeared impressed by how well the boys behaved and how easily everything went. Sarah inspected our home after I dropped the boys off at school. I'll admit that it wasn't spotless. There were some dishes in the sink from the night before and toys scattered throughout the living room, but it was clean where it counted. No safety concerns, plenty of food in the fridge and clean clothes in the boys' wardrobes. I showed Sarah the boys' room, which still contains some of Mia's touches. She had created a woodland painting on one wall when the boys were toddlers. They adore it so much that I can't force myself to paint over it, even though it breaks my heart every time I see it. Sarah spotted the piano in the main area and inquired about it. I mentioned how Jen had been teaching the boys to play, but I didn't go into depth about our disagreement. I did add that music was important to Mia and that I was trying to keep that aspect of her alive for the boys. I had prepared a folder with crucial documents, including the boys' medical records, school reports, and even a detailed plan of our daily activities. I also have documents for my job search and financial preparations. Sarah appeared impressed with my organization and effort. During her visit, Sarah interviewed me about our current predicament. I was open about the obstacles I've faced as a single father, but I also highlighted all of my efforts. I told her about our family counseling sessions and how I've encouraged the boys to talk about their mother and their emotions. Sarah didn't inquire who wrote the CPS report, but she did ask whether anyone had any reservations about my parenting. I pondered before deciding to be honest. I recounted the scenario to Jen and Mia's parents, including my assumptions about who had made the report. Sarah declined to confirm or deny, however she did state that fraudulent reports are handled extremely seriously. Sarah called me about a week following our visit. She informed me that the case would be closed because there was no evidence of neglect or abuse. She also stated that they would be looking into the source of the report for any potential system misuse. I felt a great weight lifted off my shoulders. With that hurdle crossed, I resolved to confront Jen. I asked her over to chat while the boys were at a friend's house. She was clearly nervous when she came. We sat at the kitchen table, where she had startled me with her guardianship papers a month before. I carefully lay out everything. How her actions had affected me and the boys, my suspicions regarding the CPS report, and my next steps. I informed her that, While I appreciated her assistance in the beginning, her subsequent acts had crossed a boundary. Jen burst into tears, confirming that she had actually phoned CPS. She said she was concerned about the boys and believed she was doing the right thing. She mentioned how seeing me struggle reminded her of when Mia and I first started dating, and how protective she had been of her younger sister. I then told her that, while I realized she was also suffering, her behaviors were inappropriate. I stated that for the time being, she would not be permitted unsupervised visits with the boys. She would only be able to view them if I was present. Jen did not take it well. She accused me of using the boys to punish her and threatened to sue for grandparents' rights on John and Linda's behalf. I held firm, warning her that any additional threats would result in her losing all contact with the boys. After Jen had left, I called John and Linda. I described everything that had transpired and my decision about Jen. To my surprise, they were more understanding than I anticipated. They admitted to being concerned, but later realized they had gone too far. They apologized for recommending that I give up custody and asked if we could work on repairing our relationship. We decided to start with brief, supervised visits. They came over last weekend, and it was fine. Not spectacular, but not bad either. The boys were delighted to meet their grandparents, and John and Linda appeared to make an effort to support rather than question my parenting choices. I've been honest with the boys about what's going on in an age-appropriate way. They miss their aunt, but they've shown incredible resilience. We've started attending a family counselor to assist us get through this difficult period. Noah confessed during our previous session that he sometimes feels upset at Mia for leaving us. It crushed my heart, but the counselor indicated it's a common reaction for children struggling with loss. On a good side, I was able to acquire a work-from-home position as a customer support representative for an online retailer. It's not ideal, and certainly not what I expected to accomplish with my education degree, but it allows me to be present for the boys while also earning a living. The hours are flexible, so I can work while the boys are in school and after they go to bed. I've also contacted out to other of Mia's former colleagues, who have been really sympathetic. Several of them have offered to serve as references for me, and one even assisted me in updating my resume. It's bittersweet. These are folks I used to see at corporate picnics and holiday parties, and now they're assisting me in finding work because Mia is no longer with us. It is still a battle. Every day I am overcome with emotion when I look at the boys and see Mia's eyes or grin, and it hits me all over again that she is no longer with us. But we're figuring out our new normal. Last night, as I was snuggling the boys into bed, Ethan asked if we could go to the park where Mia used to take them on Saturdays. It hurt, yet it felt good to recall those pleasant days. We're planning to go this weekend. I am more motivated than ever to be the father that Ethan and Noah deserve. Mia and I may not have prepared for this, but I am confident she would be pleased with how we are handling it. We'll be okay. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my previous update, and I wish I could say things had improved, but life seems determined to throw more problems at us. Jen reached out about a month ago to apologize. She explained that she had begun bereavement counseling and realized how improper her actions had been. She asked if we could begin mending our connection. I was cautious, but I agreed to let her observe the boys in supervised settings. We started with short visits to our residence. Jen would come over for supper once a week, and we'd play board games or watch movies together. It was awkward at first, but eventually things seemed more normal. The boys were overjoyed to have their aunt back in their life, especially since she started their piano lessons. Things were going nicely for a few weeks. Jen seemed to accept my boundaries, and there were times when I felt like we were reuniting as a family. She even helped me paint the boys' room. We preserved Mia's woodland mural while updating the rest of the walls to reflect the boys' current interests. But then, last week, everything crumbled again. I received a call from the boys' school in the middle of my work shift. Ethan experienced a severe asthma attack, and when they attempted to use his inhaler, they realized it was empty. I was horrified. I regularly check their inhalers and carry extras at school. I dashed to the school, my pulse racing the entire way. When I arrived, I found Jen in the nurse's office with Ethan. She was distraught, apologizing repeatedly. Ethan was pale and wobbly, but well. The school nurse was able to utilize a nebulizer to assist him with breathing. Jen had picked up the boys from school the day before, with my consent, and driven them to the park. Ethan had a slight episode, and they depleted his inhaler. Jen agreed to tell me so I could refill it, but she forgot. She was so embarrassed that she didn't say anything, hoping that I'd check it myself before the boys left for school. I was infuriated. Jen had not only endangered Ethan's life, but she had also violated my trust. In the heat of the moment, I informed her that she was no longer welcome in our life. I yelled some nasty things that I'm not proud of, but I was terrified and angry. The next day, I received a letter from an attorney. Jen and Mia's parents are seeking grandparents' rights and custody of the boys. They are saying that I am an unfit parent, citing the asthma event and the earlier CPS report as evidence. I am devastated and afraid. I cannot lose my boys. They are all I have left of Mia, and more significantly, they are my entire universe. I have called a family lawyer, and we are planning to fight this. But I'm worried. What if the judge thinks I'm an inadequate parent? What if they believe the boys will be better off with Jen and their grandparents? To make matters worse, my work-from-home job is faltering. The company is downsizing, and I'm concerned about losing my income just when I need it most for legal bills. I've started applying for various jobs, but it's difficult to find something that gives me the flexibility to care for the boys. The guys realize that something is wrong. They have been asking about Aunt Jen and why they are unable to see her. I'm trying to shelter them from the legal battle, but it's difficult. Noah has begun to have nightmares, and Ethan's asthma appears to be flaring up more frequently, most likely owing to stress. Last night, I discovered Noah sitting in Mia's old office, gazing at images of her on her computer. He asked me if Mommy would be upset with him for missing Aunt Jen. It broke my heart. I sat with him and we went through the images, discussing our greatest recollections of Mia. I told him that Mommy would never be mad at him for his sentiments, and that it's okay to miss someone even if we disagree with them. I feel like I'm failing them. I strive so hard to be both a mother and a father, to care for them financially and emotionally, but it never seems enough. I miss Mia more than ever. She would know how to manage it. She always knew exactly what to say to make things better. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor, has been a godsend throughout this. She is a retired teacher who lives next door and has been helping me with the boys after school. She has offered to testify on my behalf if the custody matter proceeds to court. It means a lot to know that someone notices how hard I try. I'm not giving up, however. These are my guys, and I will fight with everything I have to keep our family together. I only hope this is enough. Update 3. It has been 6 weeks since my last update, and I'm relieved to report that things have finally improved. The custody struggle between Jen and Mia's parents went to court. It was a tough process that took several days. I had to sit there and listen while Jen and her lawyer branded me as an unfit parent, pointing out every mistake I had made since Mia's death. They discussed the asthma incident, the CPS report, and times when I had been late picking up the boys from school due to work. But my lawyer was fantastic. She helped me remain cool and presented our argument effectively. We had character witnesses, Mrs. Rodriguez, the boys' teachers, and even some of Mia's former co-workers, who testified to how involved I am in the boys' lives, how they are always clean, well-fed and happy. Mrs. Rodriguez's testimony was quite moving. She mentioned overhearing me reading to the boys every night, even when I was fatigued from work, and how she frequently observed us playing in the backyard or doing homework together. We also had evidence of all of my efforts, such as documentation of our therapy sessions, the boys' improved grades, and even a notebook I'd kept to chronicle Ethan's asthma symptoms and treatments. The turning point came when the judge requested to talk with Ethan and Noah alone. I was nervous, but I was confident the boys would tell the truth. When they came out, Noah went up to me and hugged me tightly. The judge did not tell me what they said, but her eyes shone with new comprehension. In the end, the judge decided in my favor. She stated that, while I'm not perfect, I am a dedicated father who does his best in difficult circumstances. She chastised Jen and my in-laws for attempting to bully me through the judicial system rather than working together to benefit the boys. The judge ordered Jen and Mia's parents to come to family counseling with us if they want to keep their contact with the boys. They agreed, and we have had 2 sessions thus far. It's been tense, but I'm hoping we can rebuild trust for the benefit of the boys. On the work front, I received unexpected excellent news. One of Mia's former co-workers contacted her with a job offer. It's an entry-level employment at the tech business Mia previously worked for, with flexible hours and the ability to work from home as needed. The compensation is significantly more than my current employment and there is possibility for advancement. I start next month and am both excited and nervous. The guys are doing better too. We've settled into a good pattern and they're becoming more honest about their feelings. Last week, Noah said he was proud of me for fighting the bad guys in court. It made me realize that, despite my efforts to insulate them, they know more than I give them credit for. We still have terrible days. Sometimes I reach for my phone to text Mia about something hilarious the boys did only to realize she's gone. The boys still grieve when they mourn their mother, but we are learning to navigate this new normal together. I understand we have a long road ahead of us, but for the first time in a long time, I am optimistic about our future. Mia would be proud of how far we've come, and I'm determined to keep going for the boys and her memory. Thank you for your continued support along this journey. Your wisdom and nice words have been a lifeline at the most difficult times. We'll be okay. My stepfather's temptation could destroy everything, and my mom has no idea what's happening between us. Have you ever kept a secret that may destroy everything because it was so risky and enticing? That was my existence, and the secret I kept was as illegal as the subsequent sinister cravings. This is my story, and my name is Isabel. Something inside of me changed the night following my 18th birthday, and now that I'm 19, it all began. This is not what I asked for. Victor wasn't someone I asked for. But here I am, speaking the truth to you. I need to get it off my chest, even if I'm not proud of it. My stepfather, Victor, was no ordinary man. With just a glance, he was able to command the room and exert a silent authority over others. I knew there was something sinister about him from the time he married my mother. However, I believed that danger was not intended for me. Like a breeze that gradually develops into a storm, it started off so innocently. I have a clear memory of that evening. The house was silent and it was late. The only sounds were the waves breaking outside, as though the sea was aware of the mayhem that was developing inside of me. My mother didn't realize the tension was rising below. She was sleeping upstairs. When I arrived downstairs, Victor was seated at the kitchen table, wearing a flimsy robe that hardly fit me. I convinced myself that I wasn't attempting to impress him. However, the slow, methodical manner his eyes followed me gave the impression that he saw me in a way that no one else had. At first, he merely watched without saying anything. Even though it was unsettling, I couldn't help myself. His eyes were heavy and seductive, and something dark and terrible sprang up inside of me at that very moment. As though the room itself could sense the change in our dynamic, the air between us was heavy and nearly oppressive. Then he said, "You're up late," in a low, nearly growling voice. As if daring me to step beyond an unseen line from which none of us could return, his words lingered in the air like a challenge. I said, I couldn't sleep, as my heart began to race. My feet remained set despite knowing I should leave, defying the logic that was screaming in my head. He grinned, but it was a smile that aroused something deep inside me rather than reaching his eyes. "Spend some time sitting with me, keep me company." I paused, but only briefly. The table felt like a thin wall separating two worlds, one familiar and comfortable, the other unfamiliar and perilous, and before I realized it, I was seated across from him. His fingers brushed mine as his hand went over the table. Even though the touch was fleeting, it made me quiver. It was plenty to make me gasp for air and to get me to doubt every single barrier I believed I had. He said, "I've been watching you," in a softer, more personal tone. I didn't pull away as his fingers lingered for a second longer than they should have. "You're not a little girl anymore, Isabel." My chest was thumping with my heart. I ought to have said something, anything at all, but I was stuck in this weird, perverse moment. His words and the way he gazed at me conveyed a sense of both fear and excitement, as if I were more than simply his stepdaughter and no longer invisible. I was afraid because I was something more. The tension-filled stillness that lingered between us was a result of unsaid wishes seething beneath the surface. My thinking begged me to flee and to put an end to whatever it was before it got out of control. However, my body ignored me. Despite my knowledge that it was improper, I felt a strong attraction to him. "Does it scare you?" As if he could read the struggle brewing within me, he inquired in a voice so silky it was practically a whisper. "The way I look at you?" I tightened my throat and swallowed hard. I was unable to respond. Rather, I found myself standing and moving toward him around the table as though I were unable to escape some unseen force. As I got closer, his body tensed and his eyes darkened. The heat of his presence and the way the air between us seemed to vibrate with expectation caused me to stop a few inches from him. I felt a shock of electricity as his hand extended and brushed across my arm's sensitive flesh. My body betrayed me once more, and I let out a quiet gasp. Even when I muttered, "You know this can't happen," I didn't believe myself. A different story was revealed by the way I shuddered under his touch. He whispered, "And yet here you are." As his hand moved up my arm and settled on my shoulder, I felt my body lean into his touch as his thumb touched the side of my neck, seeking it in a manner I couldn't quite put my finger on. I tried to ignore the guilt that was eating at me by closing my eyes, but it didn't help. I had gone too far. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and I could feel his hot, seductive breath on my skin. I wanted to halt. I had to quit. However, I was unable to. With his lips so close to mine that I could just taste the forbidden, he said, "What do you want, Isabel?" I opened my eyes and looked him in the eye. The same yearning that boiled within me was seen in his eyes. But before I could respond, the moment was cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from upstairs. Mom was up. I took a step back, the reality of what nearly happened rushing down around me, my heart thumping in my chest. Victor flashed a sly smile, as though he had just won a devious game. He got up and brushed by me, his hand caressing my waist as he went. "We should talk again sometime," he muttered. The moment was over in an instant. However, the fire he had kindled within me was unquenchable. "And you, how would you respond if I were you? Would you walk away or give in to temptation? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I need to understand that I'm not alone in feeling torn between good and wrong. I couldn't get that night out of my head. I wasn't sure I could resist the way Victor's breath brushed across my lips and the way his touch shot sparks through my skin. The power he had over me, a subtle unsaid authority that both scared and made me feel alive, was more than simply the physical. And we started playing the game seriously after that evening. Days went by, and on the surface, everything appeared to be as usual. My mother was blissfully oblivious, as though she was unaffected by the tension in the air. However, every look, every word and every moment we shared became electrified between Victor and me. It was approaching something that neither of us could stop, like a slow-burning fuse. I made an effort to stay away from him, telling myself that it was the proper course of action. I spent more time in my room, concentrated on my coursework, or went to the beach to get some fresh air and let the sound of the waves soothe my mind. But the memory of his touch followed me everywhere like an unseen hand. Things got out of hand on a Saturday afternoon. Victor and I were left alone while my mother left for some errands in town. I had promised myself that I would remain in my room, stay away from him, and maintain my normalcy. However, as the hours passed, the house's silence tormented me, and the more I considered it, the more I found myself straying downstairs, attracted to the peril like a moth to a flame. He was reading a newspaper in the living room as if nothing had ever transpired between us. However, I could sense him. Every part of me knew about him. I remained there with my heart pounding, not sure if I should approach him or head back upstairs. But my body had already decided and was moving in closer. He continued, "I see you've come out of hiding," in a calm voice that had a tinge that made my heart race. I could tell he felt me even though his gaze remained fixed on the newspaper. "Is this the way things will be going forward, Isabel? Me chasing, you running?" I tried to say, "I'm not running," but my voice deceived me. We were both aware that I was lying. "Really?" Now, his tone was playful, as though he were challenging me to tell the truth. When he eventually lowered the newspaper and met my gaze, the magnetic force between us returned with greater vigor than before. "Because it seems like that's exactly what you've been doing." I started to reply, but the words became stuck in my throat. Rather, I simply stood there and gazed at him, feeling the gravity of the situation increase. My mind cried out for me to get out, to return upstairs, and to stop this risky game before it continued. However, my body had other ideas. With his gaze fixed on mine, Victor reclined in his chair. He whispered, "Come here." But it wasn't a request. It was a command, and I felt a shock of energy. After a brief moment of hesitation, I moved forward. I was unable to stop myself. I was unwilling to stop. As I walked toward him, my heart thumping louder with every step, the space felt too small and too hot. When I got close enough, he extended his hand and ran it up my arm, causing my skin to tingle from the heat of his touch. Breathless, I waited there, anticipating the next move. After that, he carefully and slowly drew me onto his lap. The way his hand slid over me and the feel of his body beneath mine was seductive, even though I knew it was wrong. My entire body was ablaze, with every nerve begging for more. Even so, a tiny voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me of the repercussions and that my mother was only a few miles away and was totally unaware of the treachery taking place right in front of her. "What are we doing?" I didn't know if I wanted an answer, so I whispered. Victor's lips touched my ear as his hands closed tighter around my waist. His breath was hot against my skin as he whispered, "Exactly what you want." His fingers moved slowly in circles around my exposed skin as they slid under the hem of my shirt, giving me chills with every touch. My body betrayed me once more as I leaned toward him when I should have stopped him and backed away. I felt my breath catch as his hands rose higher and his fingertips touched the curvature of my waist. The distinction between right and wrong became hazy, and my only thought was how wonderful it felt to be wanted and caressed in this way. I began to say, "We can't." But my words were halting and unconvincing. Already I was leaning into him, wanting and needing more. He pressed his lips to my neck and said, "We already are," which caused my veins to boil up. My body shook with anticipation as I let out a faint gasp as his fingers crept lower, hinting at the border of the forbidden. But before anything further could happen, there was a knock on the door. The moment broke as we both froze. Panic was coursing through my veins as my heart raced. My mom couldn't have returned by now, could she? With a dark, menacing flicker in his eyes, Victor's hand slipped away from me. Go, he urged softly. His tone calm yet forceful, as though nothing unusual had just occurred. Upstairs. Now. I refrained from arguing. With my legs shaking, I leaped from his lap and rushed back to my room, my thoughts racing. With my heart racing and the realization of what nearly transpired weighing heavily on me, I closed the door behind me. I tried to quiet the roaring tempest of emotions inside of me by pressing my back against the door and breathing heavily. There was still heat between us, simmering beneath the surface, waiting to burst at the next chance. How would you have responded? Remaining or walking away? I don't even know what I'm doing anymore, so please let me know in the comments. Even though I made an effort to suppress it, the guilt kept eating away at me. I kept thinking about Victor's hands on me and the fire between us whenever I was by myself. As if he knew precisely how to pull me apart, I would close my eyes and feel his breath on my neck and the way his fingers had moved over my flesh. I felt alive, even powerful, but that strength had a cost, and I wasn't prepared to pay it. My mother had no suspicions. Unaware of the chaos simmering beneath the surface, she continued to live her days with the same radiant smile. I saw that I was avoiding her more and more and stayed away from her whenever I could. I didn't want her to ask me questions I couldn't answer or see the shame in my eyes. I was too terrified to witness the extent of the harm that would be caused when the truth ultimately exploded because it was a ticking time bomb. The situation worsened once more on a Sunday afternoon. Victor and I were alone again since my mom had gone to see a friend across town. Since that day in the living room, the air between us had become more dense. Every interaction was a game we were both playing and neither of us had the guts to stop, a quiet challenge. I pretended to read while I sat on the back porch, but my gaze kept going to the open door behind me. I could feel him, the weight of his presence raising the hair on the back of my neck, and I knew he was inside. With him so near, I was unable to concentrate as my fingers fumbled with the pages. I knew it was him before I even turned when the door cracked open. He went outside, moving slowly and deliberately, as though he wanted me to have time to respond. With every stride he took toward me, my pulse quickened and my heart raced. Isabel, he said in a quiet, nearly whispery voice, as though we were exchanging secrets. We were, in a sense. I swallowed hard and put the book down without giving him a glance. I was unable to. I knew I wouldn't be able to control myself if I did. He said, "We need to talk," as he approached and cast his shadow over me. Instead of taking a seat, he simply stood there, looming over me like some evil entity against which I was powerless. I managed to say, "I don't think that's a good idea," though my voice was a little shaky. He knelt next to me, so close I could feel the heat emanating from his body. "You know we can't pretend this didn't happen." My breath caught in my throat as I finally turned to face him. Something I couldn't identify but sensed deep within me was visible in his black eyes. It was more than just desire. It was dangerous. It was the excitement of knowing that we were tinkering with fire and that we dared to allow it to devour us. I said, "I'm not pretending." But I knew it was a lie as soon as I said it. Victor's fingertips touched my skin in a way that made me shiver as he reached out and brushed a lock of hair away from my face. "Don't you sense it? This is between us. It won't go away." I ought to have gotten up, left and put an end to this before things got out of hand. However, I remained motionless, my body deceiving me once more. His presence was overwhelming, and his touch was electric. Even though I knew I would get burned, I couldn't help but be pulled to him like a moth to a flame. "Victor!" My voice trembled with a mixture of excitement and dread, barely audible. His breath was hot against my ear as he leaned closer. He muttered, "Tell me to stop," as his lips touched my flesh. "Tell me you don't want this." I ought to have said it. I ought to have told him to stop and go away. However, I didn't. I was unable to. As an alternative, I turned to face him, our lips almost touching. The tension between us was heavy and intolerable, and my heart was thumping in my chest. The words, "I can't," escaped my lips before I could stop them. I was pulled to my feet by Victor's hand as it moved down my arm and wrapped around my wrist. He held on tight. Standing so close that our bodies nearly touched, he held me there. As the attraction between us took hold, the outside world appeared to fade into the background. He said, "You don't want me to stop," in a confident tone, as though he knew me better than I did. "You've been considering it. It's visible in your eyes." My breath came in short spurts as I bit my lip. I detested his accuracy and ability to read me. I thought about him, what we could do and what we had already done whenever we were alone. The urge was stronger than anything I had ever experienced, yet the guilt was still present. I was drawn closer when Victor's hand moved to my waist. His body was pushed against mine, and I could feel the searing heat between us. He teased, taunted, and dared me to give in as his lips lingered over mine. My body desired this, but my head and heart were screaming for me to leave. This is what I wanted. He whispered, "Tell me what you want, Isabel." His lips grazing mine, just barely touching. I was unable to talk. My mind was racing with contradictory feelings, and my throat felt constricted. I had no choice but to lean into him, close my eyes, and wait for the inevitable to come. However, a car pulled into the driveway before our lips could touch. The truth of what we were going to do hit me like a tidal wave, and I jerked away as my eyes snapped open. My mom was at home. Victor took a step back, his expression unreadable. The fire between us remained, simmering just below the surface, waiting for the next opportunity to explode, even though the time was past. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would you turn away or allow yourself to sink further? Tell me in the comments below. I must understand that I am not alone in this problem. Long after the moment was over, I could still feel the heat of his touch. The tension between us was intensifying and taking over every silent moment, every look and every word spoken in private. In an exciting and terrifying way, Victor had a way of making me feel needed and seen. And suddenly the distinction between good and wrong became increasingly hazy with every day that went by. Everything changed that night. Victor and I were alone once more after my mother left for the evening. I made an effort to persuade myself that everything would be all right and that I could live with him in the same home without developing the same risky habits. However, I felt in my heart that I was deceiving myself. I heard him behind me as I was idly tidying up in the kitchen after supper. I felt that familiar thrill of eagerness when I heard his footsteps. I knew it was him without even turning around. Unspoken anxiety thickened the air as it shifted. Victor said, "You're quiet tonight," in his usual smooth and low voice. He drew nearer until I could feel his body heat behind me. As I dried a plate, my hand shaking, I lied and said, "I'm just tired." Naturally, he didn't believe me. His eyes were on me, waiting, watching. He was always able to tell when I was lying and when I was attempting to hide. However, it never succeeded. Even when I tried to pull away, Victor had a way of drawing me back in. "You've been avoiding me," he murmured quietly, with a hint of wicked humor in his voice. "Why?" I took a deep breath and tried to concentrate on the task at hand. I murmured, "I haven't." But even I thought the words sounded weak. He whispered, "Isabel." And I felt a chill go through me when I heard my name. I could feel his breath on my neck now that he was so near. "Observe me." I paused, holding the towel in my hands tighter. My body was deceiving me once more, pulling me toward him despite my knowledge that it was wrong, despite my mind's cries for me to move away and put as much distance between us as possible. I turned to him slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see that same need, that same deadly intensity that prevented me from thinking clearly, when his dark eyes met mine. I was caught when he moved closer and pressed me up against the counter. The intense yearning that had been growing between us for weeks was trapped between him and me. He stated in a deep, confident voice, "You can't keep running from this. You sense it. I am certain that you do." He reached out and gently but purposefully brushed his fingertips on my cheek, causing my breath to catch in my throat. I felt the heat rising in my body and my pulse speeding as the touch gave me a shock of electricity. I said, "We can't." But even I found the words to be weak and unconvincing. "And yet," he whispered, drawing me in closer as his hand moved down to rest on my waist. "We're here." I ought to have shoved him aside. I ought to have urged him to cease. However, I didn't. Rather, my body betrayed every logical notion I had, and I stood there. I felt the air between us get thicker and heavier as his hand crept lower, following the curvature of my waist, as though the room itself knew we were about to do something we couldn't undo. With guilt still gnawing at me, I muttered, "I don't want to hurt her." Yet my body still leaned toward his touch, yearning for it. Victor's voice was a sensual whisper as his lips touched my ear. "She is not involved in this. This concerns us." I felt the tightness coil inside of me tighten as I closed my eyes. His hands were all over me, soft yet firm, and I could feel myself slipping, sinking more into the pit we had made. Like a fire that threatened to devour all in its path, the heat between us was intolerable. With his lips grazing the side of my neck, he muttered, "Tell me to stop," sending chills down my spine. "Tell me you're not interested in this." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as I felt the hard planes of his body against mine, I pushed him closer rather than pushing him away. My senses were overwhelmed by the warm, musky, delicious scent of him, which impairs judgment and prevents me from thinking about anything but him. I can't, I said in a tremulous but honest voice. I am unable to stop. All he needed was that. It was as though the world vanished when his lips struck mine. Only we were there, and the heat was all-consuming and oppressive, threatening to suffocate us both. As our bodies crushed together, the tension between us finally broke as his hands tangled in my hair and drew me in closer. I could feel his breath catch. The illicit yearning that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long had us engrossed in one another. His touch was all over me, burning my skin and causing pain I didn't know was conceivable. And I was unable to stop. I had no desire to. But then everything fell apart as fast as it had started. We both snapped out of the moment as we heard a creak of floorboards coming from the hallway. Our bodies remained squeezed together as we froze, breathing raggedly. Panic swept through me as my heart thumped in my chest. Were we spotted? Was there anyone who heard? There was a flash of something there. Something dangerous. But Victor was the first to pull away, his eyes dark and unreadable. The tension in the air was still heavy and oppressive, yet he straightened and smoothed his shirt as though nothing had happened. He said in a promising whisper, "We'll finish this later," and turned to leave me standing there, gasping for air and feeling as though the weight of what we had just done was bearing down on me. If you were in my shoes, how would you respond? Would you have allowed yourself to fall further, or could you have prevented it? I need to know that I'm not the only one having this problem, so please let me know in the comments. The ensuing days were a haze of yearning and shame. My intellect begged me to stop, but every time I saw Victor, my body tensed with anticipation. But after what had transpired in the kitchen, halting was no longer an option. I was too lost, too enmeshed in a web of passion and feelings that I was unable to break free from. The tension was intense every time we passed each other in the house, even though I hadn't talked to Victor since that night. Thick and oppressive, it hovered between us, a continual reminder of what we had accomplished, and what we still needed to do. My mother was too preoccupied with her own world to realize what was going on right in front of her. The situation changed on a Friday night. Victor and I were once again alone after my mother traveled for the weekend to see some relatives. I should have gone to a friend's house or found a reason to leave, but I chose to stay even though I knew it was risky. I felt compelled to stay and watch where this perverse game would lead us. There was a knock on the door while I was in my room. Knowing who it was before I even opened it made my heart skip a beat. He was standing there when I did, leaning nonchalantly against the doorframe and staring at me with his black eyes. This time, there was no need for small talk or pretense. We both understood his purpose. "Can I come in?" Victor spoke in a low, velvety voice that melted into my skin. I ought to have declined. My pulse was pounding as I shut the door behind him, but instead of closing it and ending it there, I moved aside to let him in. The weight of all we had left unsaid hung in the air between us, making it electrifying. Victor was in the center of the room, his presence strong and overwhelming. With each second that went by, I felt the attraction between us growing stronger than before. "You've been avoiding me," he stated in a composed yet determined tone. Like he was already formulating his next move, his gaze wandered over me, resting on my lips and neck. "I had to," I said, saying hardly louder than a whisper. "I didn't know how to face you after." He interrupted me as he moved in closer, his fingers cupping my chin. My legs went weak as his thumb brushed across my bottom lip in a forceful yet tender manner. His breath was hot against my skin as he muttered, "You don't have to be afraid. This is between us, no one else." With his hands on me and him so near, I tried to slow my breathing by closing my eyes, but it was impossible. Every word and every touch was like fuel for an uncontrollable inferno. I said, "Victor, we can't keep doing this?" But I didn't believe what I was saying. I was already leaning into him, wanting his warmth and touch. He didn't say anything in response. Rather, his hand moved to my waist and drew me to him. His lips touched my ear and I could feel his heartbeat, steady and powerful. With a low growl that chilled my spine, he whispered, "Tell me you don't want this." But I was unable to express it. Nor with my body reacting to him already. Nor with his hands on me. I put my hands on his chest and rather than pushing him away, I drew him in, needing him as much as I needed air. The world seemed to collapse when Victor's lips struck mine. As his hands moved over my body, burning my skin, there was only the heat between us and nothing else. I couldn't get enough of his claiming, possessive touch. I needed and desired more. With our bodies entangled in a tangle of limbs and longing, we staggered back toward the bed. He was touching every part of me, including my neck, waist and hips, as if he was attempting to commit every detail to memory. In the way he made me feel and the way he made everything else vanish, I was engrossed in it. However, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment just when the tension was at its highest. Both of us froze, our bodies still pushed together, our breaths labored. My phone buzzed with an incoming call while it was resting on the nightstand. I felt sick to my stomach as I looked at the screen. My mom was the one. As though challenging me to respond, Victor's dark, menacing gaze locked with mine. "Don't," he said in a low, authoritative whisper. As his hand moved up my thigh, I was reminded of the heat that still burned between us and the situation we were in. However, I was unable to ignore the call. With my heart thumping in my chest, I gently pulled him aside and reached for the phone. "It's my mom," I responded, my voice wavering. In an attempt to calm my breathing, I put the phone to my ear, but my heart continued to race. I tried to sound natural when I said, "Hey Mom," but my voice sounded breathless. "Is everything okay?" My mother's worried voice said, "Sweetheart, you sound off," over the phone. I looked at Victor, who was grinning at me, that sinister, perilous yearning still shining in his eyes. I tried to gather myself, but my heart was pounding. I lied and said, "Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired, I guess." "Well, I wanted to give you an update. I will return on Sunday night. Please look for yourself." "I will," I said, putting the phone down as fast as I could. Victor was on me once more as soon as the connection finished, his lips grazing my neck and his hands moving up my sides. "Now where were we?" His voice was full of hope as he whispered. However, something had changed within me. The truth of what we were doing struck me like a wave, despite how much I wanted him and how much my body yearned for his touch. The guilt was unbearable, and my mother was out there, totally oblivious to the treachery taking place behind her back. "Victor, stop," I said in a tremulous voice as I pushed him away. He stared at me and hesitated, his eyes narrowing as though he was trying to determine whether I was serious. "I can't do this," I replied, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "Not like this." With his eyes black with annoyance and his jaw clenched, Victor took a step back. "You can't keep running from this," he continued in a menacingly low voice. "You know you want this as much as I do." However, I stepped back and shook my head, my heart thumping in my chest. "I need time." He looked at me for a long time, and I briefly believed he was trying to press the matter. Then, with a low growl of annoyance, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, gasping for air and feeling shaky from the pressure of what we had nearly done. For the following few days, I tried to tell myself that I had made the correct choice and that I had to push Victor away. However, what is the reality? In all honesty, I was barely able to keep my composure. I could still feel his hands on me and hear his deep, authoritative voice telling me not to run every time I closed my eyes. I had no desire to flee, not from him. However, the weight of our actions and the remorse were too great. But I couldn't get him out of my head. He seemed to have taken up residence in every part of me, including my body and mind. I could feel him haunting me even when we weren't together, drawing me back into that dangerous dark world where we were the only ones who cared. And I knew I couldn't avoid it no matter how hard I tried. On a Thursday night, everything went wrong. I was alone, trying to concentrate on anything other than Victor as my mom was expected to be home late from work. However, it was useless since he had entered my thoughts and the urge would not go, no matter how hard I tried to stop it. The entrance door creaked open as I was in the living room. A beat skipped in my chest. Even before I saw him, I knew it was him, that this was the moment I had been trying to avoid but was unable to do so. As he entered the room, the air changed, heavy with unsaid tension, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Victor's eyes immediately met mine. They were intense and black, filled with the same need that had drawn me in. He didn't have to say anything. I could tell everything I needed to know by the way he looked at me. The match was over. The point of no return had been reached. At last, he whispered in a low, menacing voice, "I can't stop thinking about you." His eyes never left mine as he stepped closer. "I think about you and nothing else, Isabel." My heart was thumping in my chest, and my pulse was getting faster. I wanted to push him away once more, but I couldn't find the right words. I was immobilized and unable to breathe as I stood there, trapped in his gravity. In 2 steps, Victor drew closer to me, pulling my face up to meet his eyes as his palm cupped my chin. Heat sparks raced through my body as a result of his electric touch. I shook, torn between wanting to go and wanting him to draw me closer. I shivered as he said, "I tried to stay away but I can't." His thumb grazing my bottom lip. "I'd prefer not to." His words gave me a sudden surge of need that made it impossible for me to fight or think about what I knew was coming. I was already leaning into him, wanting to feel his lips against mine and his warm skin. I desired him. I asked him. I said, "I can't do this," but I knew it was a lie even as I said it. I knew I was too far gone to stop now based on the way my body reacted to him and how my pulse raced whenever he came close. With his lips grazing my ear and his voice dark and full of promise, he said, "Yes, you can. This is what you desire. You desire me." His hand moved down to my waist and pulled me against him, causing me to moan quietly. He pushed me closer, his breath hot against my neck, and the heat between us was terrible, burning every nerve in my body. He snarled, his lips moving down my throat and chilling me as he said, "Tell me you don't want this. I will stop if you tell me to." However, I was unable to. My hands went to his chest, and as my fingers tangled in his shirt, I drew him closer rather than pushing him away. He held me tightly, as if he never wanted to let go, and I could feel the strength in his arms and the hard planes of his body beneath my hands. "Victor?" With the weight of what we were going to accomplish, my voice was wavering and hardly more than a whisper. I was engrossed when his lips met mine, hot and demanding. The fire that had been raging between us for so long could not be extinguished. His hands were all over the place, claiming, investigating and erasing everything but the feelings he gave me. I couldn't get enough of his hot, desire-filled kiss and possessive touch. Tangled in one another, we staggered back till we struck the couch. With his hands on my waist, Victor drew me down onto his lap and gave me a passionate, intense kiss, as if he was scared I might vanish if he released his hold. I didn't vanish. I completely caved. I was unable to think clearly or concentrate on anything but him as his hands ran over my body. His lips on mine, his breath heated against my skin, and his hands made me forget about everything else. Nothing else mattered to me because I was engrossed in him and the way he made me feel alive. However, something broke just as the tension was about to explode. I froze in place as I heard a car door slam outside. With panic coursing through my veins, my heart halted. Mom. She arrived home early. As we both recognized what was happening, Victor stiffened beneath me and tightened his hold on my waist. As the sound of footsteps neared the front door, I clambered off his lap, my heart pounding. "We must stop," I muttered, my voice shaking with sorrow and terror. "She is unable to know." Victor stood straightening his clothes, his jaw clenched, his eyes black and unreadable. Even though the sound of the front door opening sent a shockwave through us, he remarked softly and confidently, "This isn't over." Before I could gather my breath, my mother entered the room and her upbeat voice filled the air. I tried to act normal, as though nothing was wrong, and I forced a grin despite my beating heart. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would the truth destroy everything, or could you keep the secret? I need to know I'm not alone in this, so please share your thoughts in the comments section. I felt suffocated by the secret. It weighed heavily on my chest every morning when I woke up, and I knew that it would all fall apart eventually when I went to bed each night. Even though Victor hadn't shoved me since that evening in the living room, I could tell it wasn't finished by the way he looked at me and the implicit promises that burned in his eyes. It would never end. My mother was unaware, fully engrossed in her daily routine, living her life as if nothing were amiss. But it was all wrong. I was mistaken. Victor and I were tense, like a quiet storm simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right opportunity to blow up. Things ultimately reached a breaking point on a Friday evening. I was alone with him when my mom left again. The home was too quiet, and as soon as the door behind her closed, I could feel the air getting thicker. I made an effort to divert my attention and appear as though nothing would happen, but my body knew better. I was unable to resist the pull toward him since it was stronger than before. I heard him coming while I was in the kitchen, idly doing the dishes. His steps were deliberate and slow, and my heart thumped harder in my chest with each one. I didn't need to turn around, so I didn't. I was aware that he was waiting and observing me. His voice sent chills down my spine as he whispered, "Isabel." Like a storm approaching, his presence became overwhelming as he drew nearer. I didn't answer. I was unable to trust myself or my voice. Rather, I held onto the sink's edge, my knuckles whitened as I struggled against the surge of need that swept over me. However, it was pointless. I could do nothing to stop him. I could feel the heat radiating off Victor's body as he moved closer until he was directly behind me. An electric shock went through me as his hand lightly and playful touched my arm. I bit my lip and closed my eyes to avoid making a sound, but my body was already turning against me and embracing his touch. He pressed his lips to my ear and said, "You can't keep avoiding this. You can't continue to avoid me." The sensation of his breath against my skin made me tremble, and every syllable made my heart race. His fingertips traced languid circles across my bare flesh as his hand traveled to my waist and slid under the hem of my shirt. As I fought to maintain my grounding and maintain some kind of control, my breath caught and my hold on the sink tightened, but it was slipping, quickly. Even though my voice was weak and wobbly, I managed to mumble, "I'm not avoiding you." With a quiet laugh, Victor gripped my waist tightly and drew me back to him. I was unable to focus on anything else because I could feel his strong body and his heat radiating into me. He said, "You're lying," as his lips touched the side of my neck, making me feel hot. "However, it's all right. I am aware of your desires." The fire that had been smoldering between us for so long was ignited by his words, which were like a match striking something deep inside of me. I was unable to resist it any longer. I had no desire to. The tension between us crackled like a live wire as I turned in his arms and met his eyes. As he looked down at me with a deep and intense gaze, his hands moved up to cup my face, his thumbs grazing my cheeks. "I want you," he whispered in a low, desperate voice. "I've desired you forever." Every part of me shook with anticipation as I peered up at him, my breath coming in short spurts and my heart thumping in my chest. The want that was running through me was too intense and overwhelming, even though I knew I should go and stop this before it got out of hand. I slipped the confession out of my mouth before I could stop it, whispering, "I want you too." It only required that. I was lost when Victor's lips smashed into mine. The kiss was intense, demanding, and filled with the long-suppressed yearning we had been suppressing. His hands moved over my body, drawing me in and squeezing me into him as if he and I could not get enough. I desired him. I asked him. Tangled in one another, we staggered back and collided with the kitchen counter. With his hands on my hips and his tongue caressing mine, Victor hoisted me onto it and sent waves of ecstasy through me as he kissed me. Eager for more, eager for anything, I put my legs around him and drew him in. I gasped as the cool air touched my skin as his hand moved beneath my shirt and lifted it over my head. But it was short-lived. Once more, his lips were on me, moving across my collarbone and down my neck, making me shudder every time. I held him to me with my fingers entangled in his hair because I needed to feel him, the warmth of his mouth against my flesh. His voice was hoarse with need as he whispered against my skin, "I've been waiting so long for this. So long." I was unable to talk. My body was shaking with anticipation as his hands felt every inch of me and I was breathing in short breaths. In the fire that was devouring us both, I was drowning in him and the way he made me feel. However, the front door banged as we were ready to cross the last line. My mother was at home. The sound of footsteps reverberated along the corridor, and we both stopped, our hearts thumping simultaneously. As I scurried down the counter and put my shirt back on, my mind racing and my heart racing, I was breathing in sharp breaths. As Victor fixed his clothes, his chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths, his jaw was taut, and his eyes were dark with frustration. With a quiet, hopeful voice he muttered, "This isn't over." Before I could even nod, my mother entered the kitchen, greeting us with bright, unblinking eyes, utterly ignorant to the recent storm. But I realized Victor was correct as we looked at each other across the room. There was still a long way to go. If you were in my position, how would you respond? Would everything fall apart, or would you be able to keep the secret? I need to know I'm not alone in this, so please share your thoughts in the comments section below.